And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, we're live, brother.
Live. Good morning, 8:05 Eastern Time, and of course 5:05 on the West Coast Pacific Time. Brother, let's get right into it. Let's just first say this. I think that if anybody saw it, our friends and listeners, I'm sure they saw it. What are you gonna do again? You coffee ready? The Saturday Night Live skit. What was better? The Saturday Night Live skit about Eric Adams or Eric Adams actually at church? I'm gonna go with Eric Adams.
Dude, 100% Eric Adams. 100%, hands down. Hands down, Eric Adams. He's a hysterical dude. Totally hysterical. The dude. I saw the SNL clip, but Eric Adams at church, he's pure comedy, dude. I'm telling you, 4 more years. 4 more years.
I'm not kidding, man. We've been saying it, and I wonder if our friends and listeners think the same thing. He's corrupt. He's out of his mind. He's an asshole, and he's a moron. But I kind of like him. Like it's fun watching. Like he's the guy. He can literally hold up this cup and be like, "Look, this cup is black. This is a black cup," and everyone's gonna go, "You know what? You're right. That's a black cup." This guy can tell you anything. And I honestly, seriously, if I ever decide to go in the car sales business, I'm hiring Eric Adams and Michael Kemper, and you will sell every car. Those guys can have you walking out with no wheels, and you'll think this is the best car ever. I don't have tires right now, but this car's pretty good. Those two are awesome.
Listen, I admire Eric Adams. The dude came, he rose up through nothing. Reverend Daughtry groomed him and all the South Jamaica kids to become cops, to get into the political structure, to take over all of New York City. And he was the one, bro. He did it. He was the one. He helmed it, right? He's the godfather. He's the one. He scrapped and scraped, and he got to the top. So, and then just the way he has been throughout this entire indictment process, these investigations, these numerous corruption investigations, it's hard not to sit there and be like, wow, this guy is a character. Like, this is like, he's not flinching. He's not scared. I mean, the dude got indicted and he was dancing. And we'll play all that stuff. We're going to definitely get into Eric Adams. We're going to get deep into Eric Adams. But, I mean, just watching him, he's pure comedy. And that's why I said that the other day. I said, as a mayor, he's a disgrace. But as a character, he's a work of art because it's hysterical to watch. It's pure comedy, dude. It's pure comedy.
You know what's funny? I'm not kidding. Like, if we weren't talking about Adams as mayor, we'd probably actually have a good time hanging out with him. I mean, he calls himself the nightlife man. It's probably a good time going out with him, Maybe not to a freak out party. That's not my thing. But going out with him to concert those, that's probably actually a good time. He's hysterical. I mean, no matter what, they'll say, no, that's a white phone. I know you see black, but it's a white phone. But the Saturday Night Live skit, what did you think about it? It was pretty funny. I mean, the guy didn't have Eric Adams' voice, but it was funny. I thought the best part was like, hey, don't you live in Jersey? He's like, I live in the skies. I'm like, that's so Eric Adams.
Oh yeah, dude. I think that was the funniest part. I didn't think the kid played Adams the best. He didn't sound like Adams at all, but the writing was hysterical. The way they nailed his character, but they just didn't nail his, like, it wasn't him, you know what I mean? But they nailed his character, like the things he would say. I'm not playing the Saturday Night Live clip because they're going to copyright us, and I don't feel like dealing with it. I'm sick of the nonsense, but we'll play all the other videos of Eric Adams. And we're going to have a Latina Brown join us in about an hour as well. She's going to come on here. But before we get into that, I think we should just talk about an NYPD cop that just got indicted. And just go into that a little bit, just like what our initial takes of that is. It kind of relates to Eric Adams being indicted in a lot of ways. Eric, have you seen anything about this cop that's being indicted? I'm going to pull this up on the screen right now. It's apparently he was indicted for he hit a suspect with a police radio, lied about a patrol car, which injured a motorist.
So I can tell you this, right? So first off, here's my assessment. Seems like, so his name is Kenny Victoria. Kenny Victoria is obviously an active cop, just based on the art. Excuse me, it's early in the morning here. Based on the article, it's obvious Kenny Victoria is an active cop. And what's also indicative to me, it appears that the district attorney in the Bronx DA's office has his eye out for this particular cop, because in this article, it's actually two separate cases. So we have two separate cases that this police officer has charges brought against him. So to me, that's an indication that he's become a target of the Bronx DA's office for being an active cop. Now, one case, apparently there's one case where it involves an accident involving a motor scooter. And apparently the alleged crime to this cop is forgery. And then this, when it comes to the PAR as a witness for the witness statement in regards, apparently he was not the driver. And in the second case, it's alleged that the police officer struck the adversary, the person of interest, the perpetrator armed with a legal firearm, that he's charged with assault too. So immediately what comes to my mind here is the stand of justice, right? So we have Kenny Victoria, who's charged with two separate crimes and two separate incidents. Listen, I was a special operations lieutenant, anti-crime sergeant, active cop. It was all over the city. I haven't seen anyone targeted in this manner. What are your thoughts?
So, I mean, I hate to even comment on anything because we haven't seen anything. It doesn't sound good, but I'm going to say two things right here. This cop's indicted. He's immediately suspended. We have a mayor who's indicted, and absolutely nothing happens to him. If he was just placed under investigation, he also would have been immediately suspended. We have numerous members of the upper echelon of the NYPD who are under federal corruption probe, who had their phones taken. Numerous, not just the ones you heard about in the paper. Numerous. So you guys know who you are, right? So we had numerous people. I know who you are too. I'm not going to blast you out because I'd rather talk about it after the article comes out. But so we have those guys. They're not suspended. So there's no standard of discipline in New York City, right? So this kid's immediately suspended upon being indicted. I guess that he doesn't get the same standard that Eric Adams has, right? Because it's what are we saying? Oh, everyone has their right to due process. How come the cop doesn't have the right to due process? Initially when I see a cop allegedly hit suspect with police radio, am I like, oh my God, I can't believe a cop did that? No, because I think that there's plenty of times that you could hit someone in the face or the head or the back or a leg or an arm with a radio and it be justified depending on the circumstance. So I don't really know how it is, and we don't have the context to talk about it because we don't have the video.
You're exactly right. So that's why I think it's good when it comes to something like this. We haven't seen the body camera footage, so we can't make a complete assessment. But I think it's also meant to hit people with shock and awe, right? Oh, he hit him with the radio. Listen, big deal. Sometimes cops are involved in a tussle, including myself. I've been there. You have your radio in your dominant hand. And what are you going to use to strike when you're in a tussle with an armed perpetrator with a legal firearm that you're trying to make an apprehension? Maybe the perpetrator shouldn't be running from the police. Maybe the perpetrator shouldn't be in a tussle with the police. Maybe if there was compliance, there would be reliance, and the police officer would not have to use force. Now, again, we didn't see it. And what I'm also hearing from sources known to this particular police officer. So I haven't spoken to the police officers, but himself, but I have spoken to other sources and credible sources that apparently this police officer did not strike the adversary in the face. But to me, honestly, it doesn't even matter. If this police officer is involved in a struggle with a legal firearm and the adversary is fighting, you have fight, flight, or freeze. But if the adversary in this particular case is fighting and trying to evade the police and he has an illegal firearm, and I used to tell my police officers this, every time you arrest someone with an illegal firearm, that is the last day of your life. And that's what people don't understand. That could be the death of those police officers. Sometimes it may be necessary. So it doesn't hit me with shock and awe. I don't feel like, oh, wow, big deal. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's a byproduct. And sometimes it just happens in the course of things. But again, to me, what's apparent immediately, there's an indication that the DA's office is gunning for this particular police officer. There's 2 separate incidents within a calendar year. So again, I think what's important to also talk about, John, let's talk about this real quick here, is hypocrisy and reflect on what you said about standard. Lieutenant Stephanopoulos from the khaki pants, we talk about the different tiered system. We saw a video where he stomped on someone's head, and he's been modified. And what I'm hearing from good sources, he's gotten a very illustrious position, and he's been very comfortable. And yet this police officer has been suspended.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing. There's absolutely no standard. The part that I read in the article that's concerning to me is about the patrol car injured. Let's read this article a little bit. So this comes out by Dean Balsami in the New York Post. An NYPD cop allegedly hit a suspect with a police radio and lied about a patrol car which struck an injured motorist, according to the Bronx District Attorney's Office. Officer Kenny Victoria, 34, who was assigned to the 44th Precinct Station House in the South Bronx, was hit with 2 separate indictments, prosecutors say. Victoria, a 9-year NYPD veteran, was a passenger in a patrol car that crashed into a motorcyclist December 16th near Monroe Avenue and East 173rd Street, leaving the rider injured, authorities said. Video surveillance showed the cop car accelerated and turned into the motorcyclist as he was entering an intersection, prosecutors say. On April 30th, 311 East 170th Street, Victoria responded to a call of a man with a gun and later slammed his police radio on the suspect's head, the DA said. So I'm just going to say right here, again, because we were talking about this. Now this is a dangerous struggle. This is a deadly physical force encounter. So striking someone in the head with a radio who has an illegal firearm is actually justified in this manner. But let's just say he didn't have a firearm, an illegal firearm, and there's a perpetrator tussling with you, and you have your firearm and you have your radio in your hand. And out of reaction to protect yourself or to overcome an assault, you strike someone with that radio. I don't recommend doing it because obviously the DAs are going to look to charge you with assault too. And here's another example where Eric Adams will be completely silent on, as he is. So for those of you that saying he stand up for cops, he really doesn't. He doesn't even know police work to stand up for you. So, I mean, if he didn't have the firearm and you did use that, I mean, to me, that's justified as well too. It's not as horrible as it sounds. Like I'm sitting there with my radio and a guy comes at me and I hit him in a defensive manner, or I just happen to have and I can't do anything. I'm not dropping my radio. I need my radio. It's my lifeline to everything, to all communications. I mean, we've always learned that as a police officer, right? What's the most important tool on your tool belt? The radio. Right. So I'm not dropping that in the fight. I'm holding on to that for dear life. And so I just want to, what's your thoughts around that if he didn't have a firearm?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think you're 100% right. And I agree with you. Right. I thought about these things and we have to evaluate an incident based on the case of Graham versus Connor. And what is Graham versus Connor? Graham versus Connor is the reasonable standard based on logic that when a police officer is in a situation based on what he perceives in real time, is the metric of measurement is in comparison of how another police officer would handle that situation based on the same reasonable standard. So would it be reasonable if you had your radio in your dominant hand to strike your adversary while your radio is in hand, while you're in a tussle, to get someone in handcuffs to overcome resistance? Absolutely. And that's what the lefties and the district attorneys don't understand, or maybe they just don't care and they just bypass it on purpose, right? Just to target a police officer. Is that it's not this cookie cutter world where Well, I'm in a tussle, and hold on a minute. Let me put my radio away. If anything, your radio is just as important as your firearm, or maybe if you look at the majority of police work, it's probably even more important than your firearm, because you'll need your radio more often in your lifetime than you sure will your firearm. So exactly that. That is your lifeline. That's your communication to your backup. That's your communication for resources, your tools. It's absolutely necessary. And honestly, I don't even have a problem. And again, sometimes as a police officer, you have to adapt and overcome and utilize the resources that are in and around you. You may be in a tussle with someone that just you're outsized. Maybe this person is larger and stronger than you. Maybe you're just in a vulnerable position. You get knocked down on the ground. You're by a curb. Sometimes you may need to utilize that radio to defend yourself. So again, it's not this shock and all like, oh my God, he hit him with the radio, and that's what they want. Absolutely not. Could there be times also, let's be honest, let's be fair. Could there be times also that utilizing the radio is an overreach and overkill? Absolutely. But based on what I'm hearing right now, I don't see it yet, even without the context. And I'm going to imagine that the body cam will reflect it. And I wish the NYPD would release that immediately so we could put this to bed also and support this police officer 100%.
Yeah, I'm sick of not seeing the body cameras. The body camera, especially he's indicted. The body camera should have been out. I don't care what the DA's office says. You know, it's honestly at this point, it was for transparency. That's how it was sold. That's how the PBA and the union sold it to you. It's going to protect you. It's going to help save you. So why is it kept under wraps? Why is it not public information? It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I'm with you 100%. Like the allegation about hitting in the head with the radio, just based on what the three initial lines. I'm saying right now that I'm in support before seeing the video of the officer, because it's not spelling anything out to me. That's crazy. Oh, he was struggling with him over a firearm and he hit him in the head with the radio. Oh, boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. You know, absolutely ridiculous. So Tabitha is on here, Juju's on here. A lot of other people are saying not fair to compare the mayor to a police officer. I'm going to totally disagree with you guys, and I'm going to give you my reasoning now. What happened when Ed Caban fell under investigation under a criminal federal corruption probe? Only one, right? Ed Caban was not charged with any crimes. According to his lawyer, he's not the target of any investigation. I don't necessarily believe that, but according to his lawyer, he's not. And he was put under immense pressure to resign because he couldn't perform his job properly. And he did. And by all means, I don't believe he wanted to. Eric Adams' administration put him under immense pressure to resign. All you guys forgot about Ed Caban. We didn't forget. Ed Caban was the man of the year for all of you, for most of you, right, Juju? He was man of the year. This was Ed Caban's police department, the Honorable Ed Caban, and he came under investigation. He wasn't charged. He wasn't arrested. He wasn't convicted, right? Where was Ed Caban's due process? He had to step down. Why? Because he couldn't effectively lead, right? That's why he had to step down. So now let's move over to this police officer. He's being accused of these crimes. He's indicted. They suspend him. Why? Because they say during this time, he can't effectively be a police officer. He can't effectively have these powers of a police officer. A police officer has his gun and his shield. We need to ensure his integrity in order to achieve public safety. And now I don't care that the police officer wasn't elected and Eric Adams was elected by the people. Same should remain true, right? Now, Eric Adams didn't follow the standard he set for Ed Caban. He didn't resign. The pressure that's being put on him by nearly everybody at this point, besides a few, you know, he said at the church that only a few people are calling. It's a lot more than a few. It's only a few people that are supporting to him, and a lot of you guys that are supporting him are going to scrub your social media, or you're going to be changing your stance very shortly when the rest of this investigation comes out and you understand the gravity of it. Because maybe you haven't been listening to this podcast for 2 years, but there's a lot more things that are going to surface. This is just the tip of the iceberg, 100% tip of the iceberg. So this officer can't effectively do his job because now not only is he under investigation, he's indicted, but Eric Adams is now indicted. He's now indicted for taking bribes. Do you think that if he took bribes to hide fire suppression systems and things of that nature, do you think he would take bribes for other things? I do. I do. And now let's talk about the 10 other investigations that he's under for selling, that his staff selling contracts, selling NYPD promotions. I mean, this is a criminal enterprise running New York City right now. It's a criminal enterprise running New York City. Eric Adams, if he was a leader, he would resign, but he's not. If we had any leaders in the state, they would remove him because he cannot effectively lead New York City. He didn't effectively lead New York City the last 3 years. To sit here and say that he could effectively lead while he's under a criminal indictment corruption probe, he's under a criminal indictment for one corruption probe, and he had 7 laying out in the background. To sit here and tell me he could effectively lead and be focused on the city, you're out of your mind.
Hey, good morning, friends, listeners to the podcast. John, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. And one thing I learned in my life, especially with the Marine Corps and leadership books, is this. When you're in a leadership position, you have to set the example. Something that we all have heard. It's so simple and it's simplistic in terms, but is it simplistic in action? Not necessarily. So Eric Adams, he appoints the upper echelon of the police department. The upper echelon of the police department has to lead the police department by setting the example, which means Eric Adams has to set the example. If a police officer is held to the standard of suspension and ultimately modification after 30 days of suspension, because this particular police officer is suspended for 30 days, and after those 30 days, he will be modified. And again, and yet we do not see the same standard for Eric Adams. And even if we don't compare Eric Adams, we see other police officers and we see lieutenants amongst the police department that are in active units doing intrusive police work that are held to a complete different standard because there's a different tiered system amongst the police department. Under the authority and leadership of John Shell and Kaz Daughtry, Lieutenant Stephanopoulos in khaki pants is in a different tiered system than Kenny Rivera, who's in blue pants in general population. And yet they're both doing the same type of police work, intrusive police work. The outcome is the same. There's an arrest involved. There's force involved, but yet one police officer is suspended and one is modified. And potentially we may hear, well, one police officer was actually charged with a crime. Well, guess what? Maybe Lieutenant Stephanopoulos, it's apparent he's got friends in the right corner, because with that body camera, how is he not charged and yet this police officer is? So I think we got some great comments here. Ron Layson says, good morning, by the way, Ron Layson, many other friends and listeners on the podcast here. Although Graham versus Connor is precedent, it seems to be irrelevant in today's criminal justice system. You're absolutely right. That's why we must release the body camera. However, we have to watch the body camera in its entirety. That's how you reflect on Graham versus Connor, because you have to watch it and try to simulate what's happening in real time, even though you have a different view than Kenny Rivera had in his arrest situation, or arrest situations on 2 different situations. What was his view and his partner's view? What was also the view of the perpetrator? We're sitting here in a comfortable environment. But if we watch it frame by frame, now it's no longer about Graham versus Connor. Now it's about optics. That's why I say I like the body camera if we watch it in its entirety with a police perspective, not completely civilianized. But if we watch it frame by frame, I don't agree with it. Because here's what we get from the lefties. Here's what we get from people that suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect. They don't understand police work. They watch it frame by frame, just as we spoke about with the subway shooting, with the police officers involved in the Brooklyn subway shooting, where the lefties say, oh, a minute 20, you can shoot there. A minute 23, you can't. A minute 25, you can't. Oh, the knife's here. The knife's here. Doesn't work that way. That's not how life works. That's not how police interactions work. When Kenny Rivera, without context, when he's involved in an incident, he can't say, well, I strike him now. I don't strike him now. It doesn't work that way. And that's what people don't understand. And they don't watch body camera in its full entirety. And that's where I find it extremely problematic when it comes to the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and also the District Attorney's Office.
Ron Layson said, when I was a cop, we used to say it's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. Can that be said these days? I mean, I say yes, better to be alive than not be alive. But there are some things that are worse than death. But I don't, being arrested for doing your job righteously. I mean, I don't know. That's why I say that the NYPD is no longer a viable profession. You know, I've been saying it for a while now, a long time. You can even talk to my guy. I've been telling them, you know, and they've seen it over the years that it's not, you know, it's a scary time to be a New York City police officer. So yeah, so that whole incident there, yeah, you're right. Where's Graham versus Connor? Where are we looking at the officer's emotions, the gravity of the situation? I don't think that's being taken into account there. Now let's just go into the part about all right, here's the next part of it. The defendant allegedly lied about a police car accident that injured a motorist to cover up for the officer who was driving. And 4 months later, the defendant allegedly struck a suspect on the head with his radio. I don't know. I don't see how they either connected, but whatever. She called the Victoria's action a betrayal of public trust. Victoria was charged in one indictment in attempting offering a false instrument in the first degree, second degree offering a false instrument for file, second degree falsifying business records, and official misconduct, prosecutors say. In the second indictment, Victoria was charged with second-degree assault, third-degree assault, and official misconduct, according to the investigation. Victoria was released without bail following his arraignment on the two indictments Friday. Police Officer Victoria has gone above and beyond in protecting the citizens of New York. We are confident that the trial and the truth will emerge, and P.O. Victoria will be exonerated of any wrongdoing, Victoria's lawyer, Todd Spodek, told the Post. The NYPD said Victoria has been suspended without pay. So I'm going to say right now, I don't like what I'm hearing about this accident report. I don't have any details around it. And until we get the video that they're telling us about, I'm not going to make a final judgment on it, but I don't like what I'm hearing about it at all. But with that being said, clearly labeled out, if you guys have been following on social media, I clearly labeled out, and the Post actually did an article on it yesterday, where Dr. Jay Varmer, when he was the New York City Health Commissioner, perjured himself. I put that up on social media. I showed exactly the affidavit that he signed, where he said there was a difference between a vaccinated and unvaccinated person. And then when you coincide that, I posted that affidavit, his signed affidavit, his signed, I swear under the penalty of perjury. I put that there, and as you are listening and reading to that affidavit, you will hear him say that there is no, while he's undercover on a date, that there's absolutely no difference between those two. So again, where's the standard of justice in New York City? Why isn't Dr. Jay Varma arrested for perjury, for official misconduct, for falsifying a false official instrument? Where's the standard there? So again, we're seeing in New York City, there's not one standard of justice for all. There's a standard of justice for some, and then there's a much harsher standard of justice for others. Cops, Donald Trump, and conservatives all fall into that much harder standard of justice than others.
You nailed it, brother. Absolutely. And what do I always say? To have standard, you have to have comparisons, right? So if we compare Dr. Varma to this police officer, let's say rhetorically speaking, let's pretend that he did lie. Now, I take it very serious when it comes to telling the truth as a police officer, right? We always talk about integrity and moral principle. So let's pretend, because we don't know, let's pretend he did lie. He affected the life of one perpetrator, where Dr. Varma affected the lives of thousands of New York City workers that had to leave their lives. Now, I'm not saying one is right, but if we're going to compare, we have to have a standard. But yet, you're right, it's exactly that. The standard is the arm of justice will come after a police officer with the weight of the entire justice system. But yet, when you're someone who's of high economic status and you're a high-profile high-profile person, and you have close ties with the right people, it just shows that nepotism trumps everything. When you are in the right position, you can get away with anything. And as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Varma hurt and destroyed thousands of lives. Now, I will say this. What does it show? So we know this, right? sometimes when you do paperwork in the police department, if you and I are working together, we're in a partnership. Now, I haven't spoken to these police officers yet. We haven't seen the body camera. So I don't know exactly what pertained to the paperwork, but I can tell you this. John, if you and I are working together, you might do some of the paperwork. I might do some of it. I might not even see the paperwork that you do, and yet I might have to speak on something. It might not be reflective of what was on the paperwork. Or sometimes we're just making so many arrests, and we can't even remember what actually happened. Or sometimes our interpretation of what happened, of what we perceived, might not be the same that comes out in body camera footage, or might not be the same of what comes out in surveillance video. So what's an indication to me also, I do see that the district attorney's office was gunning for this police officer, because why was he not tried, or why was he not indicted and charged immediately? Why did they wait for the second case to come on? Because the information that I have right now, it appears the first case was somewhere around November, December of 2023. And the second case, which is the case of the forgery, and the second case involving the police officer in the firearm arrest, where he apparently and allegedly struck the adversary in the face with his radio, was in about May of 2024. So there's about a 5-month gap. Why was this police officer, if he did in fact lie, why was he not charged immediately? Why did he continue to go on and do police work? And apparently, if he lied and he lacks integrity, why would they allow him to police and lie and compromise other arrest situations and other documents in a follow-up to that case? And that's where we have to show the standard in comparison to Eric Adams. Because if this police officer cannot police effectively and he cannot be trusted, then how could Eric Adams be out as the mayor, and how could he be trusted? Because everything he does from now on moving forward, if in fact he does lack integrity and moral principle, everything's infected. So again, we have to go back to standard and comparisons, and we don't see the same standards.
Yeah, 100%. But just on the paperwork real quick, obviously anything you sign, you should thoroughly inspect. Nobody cares how many arrests you're making. Nobody. Because when they're scrutinizing it, when you're going to CCRB, you're going to internal affairs, a DA scrutinizing your paperwork, you're going to get arrested if you sign something that you shouldn't have signed. And it could be a mistake. It could absolutely be a mistake. You know, I was on the stand one time. I was a rookie, and you know when you're a rookie, nobody helps, right? I had a DOE guy slammed into a stoop. It was on Staten Island too. I don't know how these people had a stoop. They must have been from Brooklyn and built a stoop, but it was a concrete stoop, and literally the car was like teeter-tottering over it, and the dude was hammered. I don't even know how he survived. And I made sure on all my paperwork to write the same thing. That was the one thing that stuck in my head from the instructor, was that, you know, your paperwork has to be consistent. The arrest has to be consistent. And when you have a DWI, and I was never trained in I didn't know how to do a DWI arrest, but there's a million different pieces of paper and you're just doing the same story. So I just wrote the same story over and over again. At TPO, defendant was seated behind and seated in the driver's side of the car. Car crashed into the home. Keys were in the ignition in the on position, car and drive, engine smoking, but it was so badly damaged it wasn't running. And that went on all of the pieces of paper and DWI paperwork, right? So now I'm up on the stand. And the defense attorney is asking me all these stupid questions. Oh, how do you know? Where was he? And I just testified the whole thing. You know, that he was in the driver's seat. The keys were in the ignition, turned on. The car was in drive. The engine was smoking, but it was so badly damaged it wasn't running. You know, and he was flushed in the face. I found alcohol in the back. All these different things, right? So we're testifying all that. He's asking me all these different questions. Could he be red in the face because of the accident? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Could he? But and he kept going on that. The DA was weak. He wasn't objecting to anything. And then he says to me, "Is that your final testimony, that the car was in drive and the keys were in the ignition and the engine was so badly damaged and the engine wasn't running?" And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that is my testimony. He's like, that's your sworn oath today? And I'm like, yeah, that is my sworn oath. And he presents the DA's note. And he's like, right here, it says that the engine's running and you testified to that it's not running. I recommend that this case be shut down and be brought up for a perjury trial. So I was like, Your Honor, I was like, I've never written that anyway. Could I look through my notes? He's like, yeah, I looked through all my notes. I looked through my memo book. I'm like, I've never written that anyway. I don't even know what that is. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And he's like, this is what you swore to in front of the DA. And I'm like, it was her scratch copy. And I was like, get her right here, right now. Put her on the stand. I'm like, I didn't tell her that. I said it wasn't thing. I submitted all these documents, said not running. Anyway, long story short, the judge dismissed that, whatever the hell the DA was not the DA, the defense attorney was trying to do. Ultimately, didn't get brought up on perjury, and the trial continued, and the person was found guilty. But that's how scary it is to be a police officer. Because think about that. I really wasn't trained on doing the paperwork. If possibly I did say something different by mistake, I could have been arrested and removed from my career right there 2 months into my job. Not even. It wasn't even 2 months. It was probably like 2 weeks into my job. Two weeks into my job right out of the academy. Or maybe it wasn't even that quick. So that's how scary it is. So just be really careful with the paperwork for you young guys. Don't ever rush. I don't care. Nobody thinks you're a hero, and nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care how many arrests Kenny Victoria made right now. All that matters is what happened that night at that time. That's it.
Hands down, I agree with you. Our brother Ron Layson always says that there's mistakes of the heart, and sometimes it's malicious intent. So we have to be able to recognize if, in fact, right, because we don't know, if, in fact, there is a mistake here. Was the mistake of malicious intent? Was it a mistake of the heart? Or was it a misinterpretation by the district attorney? And if so, what I would like to know, did Kenny Victoria fill out this paperwork himself and sign it, or was this done by his partner in the arrest paperwork, who was actually the arresting officer? So there's a lot of context missing that we don't know. But what I like to do is I like to switch gears when it comes to this case and say what I've been talking about for the longest time, and it's this. So here we are. We have a police officer who's represented by the New York City PBA. And again, this is why I say, so I've heard from some credible sources, some good sources that I've spoke to, that this police officer has elected to seek out his own counsel. Now, I don't blame him. And that's why I always say, why are we spending so much money on these dues when anytime when a police officer is in a pickle, the majority of the time they seek out outside counsel. So I think, John, I'm curious what you think. I think that the PBA should have an option. If they want to continue to keep their members paying their dues, they should have an option that if you are in a pickle or a jam, that you can utilize the PBA attorneys, the attorneys that work for the PBA, at no charge, because whatever rate they pay them. And if you decide to seek out your own counsel, that they would then give you a voucher, whatever rate they would pay for their attorneys for your case, give you a voucher for that amount. If you want to get some high-paid attorney that's going to be in excess of that, then you would have to pay the difference on your own. That's my take on it. What do you think?
I love it. I love it, because I don't know. I know some attorneys that work for the unions that I like, and I know some that I wouldn't even. I'd be like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm good. I'll pay double. I don't care. Absolutely not. But I'm not saying that there are some sharp guys that work for the unions. Unfortunately, though, as sharp as they may be, I don't trust them in when the political winds blow, right? Because I know some sharp guys that turned their back on me that knew the things that I was saying were right, and they knew what I was saying was illegal. They knew what I was alleging was illegal, and they were like, "This, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking." It was like it was ridiculous. So yeah, no, I love it. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that's something that the members need to suggest. Yeah, because why does Kenny Victoria have to now come out of his pocket? This is why he pays union dues. So JH asked a question. I kept it up here because I didn't want to forget to answer it. Because it is a pretty good question. He says, John Eric, if he reigns, and I'm sorry, if he resigns, I'm sorry, I have him, Eric Adams, saying he will reign and not resign in my head.
I'm saying the same thing.
I think the dude, I'm sorry, I just have that in my head. He said, if he resigns, does he have to pay out of pocket for that celebrity attorney who is paying for that expensive lawyer now? So, Jay, it's a great question. So that dude actually charges $2,000 an hour. His name's Spiro. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's $2,000 an hour. So we know that Eric Adams consistently campaigns for money and consistently has been asking for money for his defense fund, which is, by the way, illegal. He can't do that as the mayor, but he's been doing it anyway because the laws don't apply to him or any of his friends, right? And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. What's going on? But again, he consistently campaigns to get money in his criminal defense fund. Because if you guys remember, and most of you don't, and that's my problem with most people, is that we have too weak memories. We don't remember that a year ago, Eric Adams said, I need to raise, I believe it was $2 million for my defense fund because I believe the feds are going to indict me, right? So, and then it goes by the wayside. He raises a ton of money in that defense fund. And that is where that money is what should be paying for that $2,000 an hour to Alex Spiro. I don't have faith that that's what's happening, though. I would not be shocked if New York City taxpayers were paying for his defense. I would not be shocked at all. I think that's something for you in the media to actually ensure that taxpayers aren't funding this. That this isn't another thing that's in his official duties that he's trying to pull, and have corporation counsel indemnify him. And I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't be shocked. And if it is, it's another charge of official misconduct against Eric Adams, against corporation counsel, and all of the sexual harassment cases and sexual assault allegations that have came out against this administration. All of them, all of the people involved that are being represented, Eric Adams, as well as the head of corporation counsel, should be arrested and charged for official misconduct for misusing taxpayer money.
Absolutely. And I'd like to actually just revert back to what we were saying when we were comparing Dr. Varma, who's lied and affected thousands of lives. Because I'm getting some text messages right now. I'm sure Juju would love to know. It's anonymous sources from different police officers that work in the Bronx. And what they're telling me is apparently the arrest paperwork that reflects this particular case. So what I'm hearing is that apparently they're saying that Kenny Victoria didn't even fill out the paperwork himself, that it was done by his partner in the arrest paperwork, and he never testified to it, that the DA is going off the surveillance video. So hopefully that the body camera reflects, or the surveillance video comes out and actually reflects that. And hopefully, if that is the case, this particular police officer is vindicated and reinstated and compensated, because he is suspended for 30 days right now, and he will be modified. So again, just on the looks of things, it appears to me that the district attorney may be gunning for him. It doesn't sound good anytime someone is accused of lying. Listen, we believe in integrity and moral principle, but I thank God in my career I haven't seen any police officers intentionally try to lie on their paperwork. Most police officers I know from my experience are terrified when it comes to their paperwork, especially in regards to the district attorney. I'm making sure that they dot their I's and cross their T's in fear of retribution from the district attorney's office. So in this case, I wouldn't see it being any different. I hope that it plays out. And I hope, and this is, again, when we talk about transparency, immediately when this police officer was indicted and there were charges, the body camera footage or any surveillance video pertaining to either arrest should be immediately released to the public and transparent. And then people like myself and John can give an actual perspective and not just say back the blue. We'll say back this particular police officer, and here's why, and break it down. And we do it together with our friends and listeners on this podcast. We do it together, and we come to the middle and try to compromise on what our perspective is and what is, because what I usually say is this: it's not necessarily right and wrong when it comes to police work, but it's more actions and consequences. So Scooch had made a great comment. I'm trying to find it if I can get back to it, because it's exactly what we say when it comes to nepotism. Man, there's so many good comments flying in here. Scooch says here, and he's absolutely right also when he talks about the PBA, lawyers often defend the interest of those who pay them, not those they are paid to defend. Brother, you couldn't be more right. Let me tell you, that is hands down. There was another comment. You're on fire here. There was another comment you made that was on the money. It had something to do with nepotism. But again, our friends and our listeners to the podcast, they see it. This administration is riddled with nepotism. Nepotism's tied to corruption. We see a complete different standards. Eric Adams is getting treated far different than this police officer. This police officer's life is in shambles right now. And Eric Adams is still going to reign supreme. No pun intended, but of course.
Reign. And a civil servant's going to reign over the people. So Tom's asking, they were selling promotions. I'm not going to lie. I've been hearing that for months. And every time I hear it, I ask the same. I said, give me an example. Give me an example of a promotion that was sold. And there's been some examples given to me. But is it nepotism or is it a bribe? I don't know. But that did come out in the Post recently. We never made the claim here because everything was uncorroborated. And real quick, just Eric, if that kid didn't sign the paperwork or didn't coerce anyone to sign the paperwork, then that is a bogus charge whatsoever, and then that should be completely thrown out. I remember hearing you say that. If he did not sign that paperwork and he didn't coerce anyone to sign paperwork, there was no nefarious intention. If that's the truth from whoever told you that, then absolutely that's a complete bogus charge, and this kid's being targeted by the DA's office, 100%. But yeah, that's the allegation that they were selling promotions. But I mean, we've seen so many bad promotions, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it's only under the Eric Adams administration. I'm not. We say that nepotism has reigned supreme under the Eric Adams administration. It's just in full force. I mean, the only way you're getting promoted is by knowing somebody. So you could show me the worst promotion on there. I don't care. Oh, this person's been a cop for 6 months, like Shay's son, Kemper's kid, all these Chiefs kids. You can name any chief and any of their kids or their nephews. They're all getting detective shields right away. They're going right to details right away. But it's always been right. And then it's sitting here. What if it was my son and I was a chief? I don't know. Maybe I'm guilty. I'd probably be guilty of the same thing. I know we did an episode on Joe Fox, but I gotta say, like, his son really isn't a nepotism baby. He's like the only one I'll say that he's been standing on his own too. That kid, like, his entire career. So it's not all the kids, not every kid always falls a chief and he does whatever he wants. But I mean, that is the case always. Is that, like, if you know people, right? So was it a bribery or is it nepotism? So, like, the examples are weak is what I'm saying. It's an allegation that's being made that they were selling bribes. I don't even know how you could prove it without having them on a wire, like them admitting it, making the deal, or someone coming and saying I bought a promotion, or someone ratting them out saying that they were selling promotions. So until I see hard evidence, I don't know.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. We need to see hard evidence when it comes to that. Absolutely. So, our friends and listeners, we got some fantastic comments. Everybody's weighing in here. These comments are flying in. And listen, that's why I say at this point, we talk about the fraternal organizations. Kenny Victoria, I saw the picture, and there's no doubt about it with that name. He's obviously Hispanic. Where is the Hispanic Society, this one? Well, the Hispanic Society honor Kenny Victoria as Man of the Year. If it turns out, after we see the body camera footage, so far what I'm hearing it's a great police officer. I'm hearing he's a great cop. I've only heard great things. People have been calling me, vouching for him, telling me he didn't sign this paperwork, that he never even saw it. People tell me that he never even struck this guy in the face, that he's a great cop. I'm also hearing that he's a lieutenant in the Army. So I have heard nothing but good things. So I can't wait. I'm anticipating the body camera footage so that it actually reflects this story, and we can completely support and stand behind him. But so far, it appears, I think, that the district attorney's office is gunning for him. It's two separate cases about 5 months apart, and it's first coming out now. But again, where is the Hispanic Society? Where are they? Are they going to be there for this police officer? So I got the information. This police officer's next court date will be December 3rd. December 3rd, it will be in the Bronx. Go out there and support this police officer. Do not wait for your union. That's what I've been saying, just like we had Juan Perez. Juan Perez was convicted of an assault for doing his job as he's paid and trained to do. No matter what, you're innocent till proven guilty, just as Eric Adams is. So is Kenny Victoria. So is this police officer. So get out there and support him. Tell the Hispanic Society, are you going to get out there and support him? The entire Hispanic Society should be there in full force. Every organization should be. Every fraternal organization is. It was the Albanian Society that was honoring Ed Caban as Man of the Year. Now, Kenny Victoria can't get you promoted. Will you actually go out there for Kenny Victoria? Will you go out there and support a police officer who can't get you promoted, who's not there of your best interest? That's what I want to see. December 3rd, get out there and support him. Speak to other police officers. Find out how you can help. Maybe he probably needs some money right now, unless we could get the union to step in and give him a voucher. And if he wants to pay the difference, what it costs with his lawyers, that opportunity should be afforded. Absolutely. You should get to pick the attorney of your choice.
I think we agree for the first time this morning. Let's not make that happen again. All right, so
if we agree again today, we got to shave our beards.
Yeah,
No, forget about it. I'm just kidding. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to shave.
So, all right, so let's get on to Eric Adams. But before we do, we got a good friend with us. We're going to bring up to the stage our favorite community advocate in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Latina Brown.
Good morning, guys. I got my cup of coffee. I'm ready.
All right, nice.
Monday.
So listen, we saved Eric Adams for you. Like we were talking about something else. We're going to switch. Let's talk about Eric Adams saying he will reign and not resign. And let's go over this entire corruption scandal. But before we do, what do you got going on? Anything?
So far it's quiet. It's very quiet. The only thing that's circulating in the community at the moment is AOC, Congresswoman AOC, and the fact that she's neglected her district. I'm her constituent, so there's a lot of issues with the homelessness, the mentally ill, trash in the streets, trash in the parks. I mean, we're dealing with a lot here in her district, as you well know. It's all over the news. It's circulating with the open air drug use, the prostitution, the same thing with her. She's absent. She's never here.
Well, I mean, Eric Adams is absent from there too. So Eric, could we let's just start backwards. Eric, give us your thoughts on, and then Latina will go to you. Like, what's your thoughts around Eric Adams being indicted? Is it political in your eyes, Eric?
Well, first of all, good morning, Latina. You are bright-eyed. You look wide awake. It's
I got some sleep.
well, cheery-eyed. I love it. Listen, we spoke about this numerous times, and I'm not going to hide and say it. I think there's been so many different facets, so many different appearances of impropriety when it comes to Eric Adams. I have to be honest. When that indictment came out, I thought maybe it would have something to do with Consafritos or some of the other stuff, the other clouds of suspicion that we've been hearing. So if I was a betting man, I would bet that we'll probably see some supplemental indictments come down. I think this is just the first heading. But I don't think this is political at all. Eric Adams has supported open borders. Eric Adams supports a sanctuary city. Eric Adams could have the stroke of a pen, and he can have an executive order that's in complete opposition to sanctuary city. Or he can say, you know what? I don't even care about this sanctuary city laws. I'm going to defy them because it's in the best interest of public safety, and we are going to work with our federal partners, the police department, under my authority, under the behest of Eric Adams, under my reign, will coordinate and will facilitate information to the FBI, to ICE, Department of Homeland Security, to have the illegal military age males deported. He never said that. What he said was a cry for help, for funding. That's what he did. Eric Adams does a great job of showing you. We don't know what he's for or what he's against. His mouth says one thing and his body says another. Watch that Saturday Night Live skit. Even on the Saturday Night Live skit, they address it also. I know. By the way, Latina, which one did you think was funnier, the actual Saturday Night Live skit or Eric Adams himself?
I think the mayor himself, because he's making himself look really bad. If I was him, I would just keep quiet until everything plays out. he's in hot water right now, and the community they're talking. A lot of the Blacks and Hispanics are not happy with him right now, and they're not happy with the Democrat Party at the moment. I mean, I think that with everything that's going on, this could be a potential setup for New York to possibly go purple or red, because a lot of the Black and Hispanic community, they're exiting the party, and the party is nervous at the moment because now they don't have that control over us anymore. And it's like, okay, well, you know, their policies that they rolled out, because you do know that New York City is ran by a body of city council members that are progressive and socialist. So we're under a one party rule. Where has that gotten us? With these members running the city, we've gotten nothing but, you know, crimes and an open border crisis. We have illegal immigrants in the city, basically terrorizing and assaulting the citizen people every day. So I think that this kind of like, it helps. And if the Republicans were smart, they would take advantage of this moment to step up to the plate and really start organizing. That's something that I would do. I'm no longer a Democrat, which I'm glad I left the party, but I don't agree with the majority of their policies. I think it's really hurting us more than it's helping, right? So I think the mayor kind of, you know, he put himself in a position where he's now looking like, he looks like a joke to us. We don't take him seriously. And I'm tired of the identity politics. Let's not use identity politics, because this is bigger than that. This is not politically motivated. This is bigger. This is something that's been brewing, and it's been happening for years. The feds don't just come and knock on your door out of nowhere. This is something that's been going on for quite some time now.
But do you think that it's political in nature, like everybody's saying? Do you think that
No.
that you don't think it has anything to do when he said that this is going to ruin the city and he was asking for funding?
No, I don't think so.
All
That's
right.
my opinion. I think it's just something. I don't think it's just him. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I believe that there is more to come.
I agree with you. I don't think it's political. I do think he has spoke out against the party now. I think his statement, though, is like his statement that he put out after in when the indictment was about to drop, or when the indictment dropped, his statement that we put out on that X space that we did immediately upon him being indicted. I think his statement, though, just really, that was the moment he gained a lot of public support. I seen a lot of people come to support for him, and I seen a lot of conservatives come to support for him. I seen a lot of people, oh, he's being targeted because he spoke out. Nobody's saying he did a good job. Nobody's saying what he did do, any of his accomplishments in the 3 years. No one's saying anything that he stopped this socialist city council from happening. No one's saying any of that. Everyone's just saying, well, it could be worse, and it appears to be political. But when he spoke out and said that I'm being targeted because I stood up for you, I think that was one of the most brilliant political moves I've ever seen to garner public support, because I think it worked. You've seen that. You've seen all of the conservatives jump. You've seen all the right jump to him. A lot of people not in New York City, by the way. You know, you even seen Donald Trump come to bat for him. You've seen all these people, but I think that was the fork in his coffin. I'm sorry, the nail in his coffin, because I think that just really put him at odds with the Democrat Party, because he's saying that Biden and Harris administration is targeting him. So what ultimately, what are we, 37 days away from the election?
I think it's 36 days now.
36 days away from the election in November. I think Eric Adams has now spoke out against the party, and allowing the charade to go on for the Democrats will ultimately not only hurt Kamala Harris, but every other Democrat on that ballot. Eric, what do you think about that? Do you think that him saying that he's a target helps the Democrats, or does it hurt the Democrats?
I think we need to break this down in different forms, right? So first of all, I want to say this. I think it's a great question that you're asking, right? But I want to say this. If it's true, in fact, that the political pundits right now believe that Eric Adams' statement is in opposition to the Democratic Party and Biden the Biden administration, along with Kamala Harris, which I think he's been a lockstep. He called himself the Biden Brooklyn. If in fact that's true, are we saying that there is a threshold for corruption, that we have a certain amount of corruption that's allotted? In the same comparison, when we do health inspections in restaurants, right? There is a certain amount of potential roaches or mice that is permitted, right? Sometimes it's just impossible to have nothing, right? But so are we saying that there is a threshold for corruption when it comes to this? I don't believe that at all. So I think right now he's in political purgatory. I think that he does, I think that he's actually at the point where he's almost aligning himself with Donald Trump, because he was the guy who said that Donald Trump, you know what, he deserves what he's getting. And you know what? We got plenty of room in Rikers. So what are you saying, Mayor Eric Adams? Do you have room in Rikers for yourself? So I think right now he's in political purgatory. I think it's a fantastic question what you're saying. Does it hurt either party? I think it helps the Republican Party, and I think it hurts the Democratic Party if, in fact, they believe this is political. It only helps the Republican Party, because now we could say what was done to Trump was done to you, Mayor Eric Adams. What do you think about it now? I mean, we see the hypocrisy and we see the similarity in many cases, right? He also championed for women to be able to file sexual allegation lawsuits when it's way beyond the statute of limitations. Latina, maybe you can refresh my memory what that act is called. I forgot what it's called, but when women have the ability to make an allegation beyond that statute of limitations, he was the one that championed for it, and it was utilized and weaponized against Donald Trump, and eventually was utilized against Eric Adams himself. So Eric Adams has done a great job of putting himself somewhere in the middle, and now it seems to be he's aligning more to Republicans, but I think at this point, he's in political purgatory. Latina, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's called the Adult Survivors Act. It was passed on a state level. I think that what he's doing is a tactic. It's very obvious. My background is in politics, and I've done campaigns. It's very strategic, but I believe at one point, a handful of the progressive politicians were bashing Trump, right? Remember, they held press conferences and put out statements about Trump and called him pretty much every name out the book, and he didn't get his due process, right? Everybody jumped the gun, and it looks like, there's a possibility that Trump might get vindicated, because his situation was definitely, he is a political target, right? So him being in the situation that he's in now, he's using a tactic where he can gear his support from Blacks and Hispanics. I think I saw a comment in the chat right now where somebody commented and said that we hate Eric Adams. That's not true. This has nothing to do with hate. This has nothing to do with our personal feelings. This is about what's being rolled out, what's put in front of our faces, and it's obvious that no one is reading these indictments. It's 57 pages. Please take the time to read and comb through it so you can see what the charges are, and then you can come back and circle with us before you put anything in the comments. But anyway, this is not just about the mayor. This is about a possible corruption scandal. And this is something that's been going on and happening behind the scenes for a very long time. And the people, they were blind to it. Now it's coming to the forefront. I think that there was also comments that were made that the U.S. attorney is personally targeting, conservatives. That's not true, because if you recall, he had an indictment against, remember Lieutenant Brian Benjamin? He's progressive. Okay, this is not about political views. This is about a possible corruption scandal, which I think that maybe is going to be one of the biggest RICO cases in New York City history. And I don't think it's going to just stop or end with just the mayor. I think that many more will follow, and everything is just coming to the light. So this is not about personal opinions. This is not about race. This is not about, gender, whatever they're trying to twist it to be. This is about right and wrong. This is about the law. This is about a U.S. attorney that's doing his job. This is nothing personal. So I agree with you, Eric, and I agree with you, John. I don't think that this is politically motivated. I think that he's using the moment, he's seizing the moment to make it about him and trying to pass it off as something that's politically motivated. He's taking advantage of the moment.
No, yeah, I honestly think it's politically brilliant if he needed the public support, but I mean he already lost the public support, so he's getting the support on social media. He's underwater with black voters. He's underwater with all voters. 2/3 of New York City voters disapprove of how Eric Adams is handling his job as the mayor. 2/3. I mean, so it's more than half of everyone disapprove is not happy. They don't trust him. There's a lot of questions in this poll about there's a lot of questions in the poll I just pulled up about how like do they believe him when he talks, all this stuff, and most people don't. And I really, again, I think it's good to become a media darling and to gain that public attention. He was successful politically in doing that by saying, I'm a target. I did this for you. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm in New York City right now. I was sitting having breakfast and I had a bunch of old guys sitting right next to me and they were talking about this. And it's sitting there complaining about how the city is. And they're like, yeah, but they're going after Adams though. And it's going to be worse without that. And I'm like, this is why we're here, right? Because there's no one on the bench. Everyone's complaining about Jumaane Williams. Joe Borelli ran against him for public advocate. How come we weren't fighting harder to get Jumaane Williams out and put Joe Borelli in that spot? I'm not the hugest fan of Joe Borelli, but I would vote for him over Jumaane Williams. I would vote for him over Eric Adams. And so we're seeing that he not only did he not gain the support of New York City residents, he maligned it. He now distanced himself from the Democratic Party. So I don't see him having too many friends other than the friends he's had. I don't think you're going to see Eric Adams in office much longer. So I got two questions for you, Eric. Should he resign? Do you think he's going to resign? And then a question for you, Latina.
Latina, good morning. Listen, this is a great subject here that we're talking about here because Eric Adams said it himself. He said he's not going to resign. He's going to reign. And I can't believe that people are screaming and cheering for him because did they actually ever understand what it means to reign? But it goes back to what we've been saying. We've been saying this for a long time, that Eric Adams doesn't want the public. He doesn't want to serve the public. He wants the public to serve him. To reign is to be a king. It's to be a monarch. So they actually listen to what he says, what comes out of his mouth. I think Eric Adams has shown he's a man of pride. He's a man of character. Someone said here, Latina, you had alluded to it, that we hate Eric Adams. If they listened early on in the episode, I'm not sure whoever said that, but early on in the episode, John and I were both laughing. We think he's a character. We actually think he's pretty funny. You know what? If I wasn't thinking about Eric Adams as a mayor or as a corrupt individual, he actually seems like he'd be a fun person to hang out with. I don't know if I trust him to go to a Diddy party. I wouldn't want to go to a freak out party with him, but maybe a concert freak house. He seems like a pretty funny guy. I mean, the guy can hold up a glass and tell you what's black, and you're going to believe it. I mean, he's a magician, but I don't think he's going to resign at all. I think that I don't think that it's in his character to concede, to admit any shame. I mean, this entire administration, it's him, it's Banks, it's Madry, it's Kaz Daughtry, it's John Shell. None of them have any shame or embarrassment. Again, somehow they none. So I don't think he's going to resign. Do I think he should? Absolutely. Leadership must set the example. He's in a position of leadership. He appoints the upper echelon of the police department. He appointed Ed Caban as the police commissioner. Ed Caban was the de facto leadership. He wasn't significant, but according to the hierarchy, he's supposed to be the leader of the police department. So if Kenny Vittoria had to be suspended, Eric Adams should resign. Absolutely. But he won't. He said he's going to reign supreme. That's what he's going to do.
Oh, did you see that? He's now reaching out to the churches. But I think that with his pride and his cockiness, it's the attitude. He's not going to resign. He's going to wait until he drags this out to the bitter end. And that hurts the people. We're going to be affected by all of this because while he's going through the process, who do we have to turn to for to lead the city? It's certainly not going to be Governor Kathy Hochul because she's focused on upstate. She can care less about what's going on in the city because if she really cared, she would have never allowed for the sanctuary laws to be applied to illegal immigrants, which is really for asylum seekers. But that's another conversation in itself. We have Speaker Council Adrian Adams. She's not going to lead the city in the right direction because she too is also rolling out policies that continue to destroy the people in the communities time after time after time. So who do we really have left to turn to? It's not the Attorney General. And by the way, she's been very quiet about what's happening with these indictments and what's going on in NYPD. We know that she's no fan of NYPD, so why the silence? I think that overall, we're the ones that's paying the price for it. Even with the migrant crisis, we're actually paying for their resources. So either way, we're getting slammed. It's not fair to us. And I think that now is the time people are waking up and they're exiting the party out in massive droves because the cost of living, look at the quality of life. Public safety is such a heavy topic right now. And we're sick and tired of progressive politicians trying to downplay and basically they're gaslighting us. And the mayor's been doing it too. We're feeling it. If you're not in New York City to feel what we're going through on a daily basis, don't talk about what we're going through because we're the ones who have to deal with this time after time. I think overall, it is just time for a new leadership. 2025 is going to be the year where you're going to see a lot of city council members that's going to be challenged. And expect that. It's going to be a lot of conservatives. And I'm saying this to the Republicans. Take advantage of the moment right now. You're supposed to be doing outreach like you should have been doing outreach from like a year ago for these local elections. The local elections play a role too, just as much as the presidential elections.
Yeah, so let's just play a few clips from inside the city real quick. Eric
What
Adams.
you got, John?
There's a bunch of good stuff here. So let me pull this up to the screen real quick. I'm gonna share my screen. Where do we go? Oh, sorry about that. And here we go.
Any inquiry that is done, we're going to fully participate. I have full confidence in her. If she will stay with the campaign team, I would love to have her. I would be shocked if someone states that our campaign coordinated in illegal behavior. We are fully cooperating. We follow the law. So I can become a better mayor by having a global view. Because New York City is an international city. And so someone wrote an article that I must have went to 300 African events. We follow all the important requirements. That is what we always do. Brianna, she's no longer doing fundraising for the campaign.
I think you're going to be indicted.
I mean, you guys want to create a narrative, and that narrative is not a reality. First of all, your question was okay. A lot of people were not expecting that. You were expecting it. We're already giving money through the campaign's finance. I don't want to raise money. I don't want to spend hours raising money. These investigations, they raise a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. They are serious matters that must be addressed. But this administration is focused on New Yorkers, focused on protecting the people of this city, and the investigations will take care of themselves.
So there was Eric Adams over the course of this. It's crazy, man. I was watching a clip of Andrew Yang debating Eric Adams, and Andrew Yang said this guy was a state senator and he's a Brooklyn borough president, and he's been surrounded by federal corruption probes. And he's like, and if you're going to vote for Eric now for mayor, do you think that he won't be under a federal corruption probe? Do you think the same things aren't going to happen? Because he skated on his last probe, right? And he was guilty, but they didn't do anything. They didn't charge him. He remained uncharged and unindicted, or whatever you want to say. And so he completely skated there. But Yang had basically called it, and I'm no fan of Andrew Yang. I'll pull that clip up, but that was really a telltale of what was going to happen under this administration. And you see clearly the change in Eric Adams, the gaslighting to then, okay, now I have to acknowledge this. I'm going to acknowledge it. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. And then switch to, I'm not getting indicted. Nothing's happening to me, even though he's fundraising for money. Someone said that fundraising isn't illegal to have the campaign. To have the legal defense fund isn't illegal. No, to have the legal defense fund isn't illegal, but to use your office of the mayor to campaign for that is illegal. That's what I was talking about. And Tom Joyce made a comment that the Wall Street Journal had said that this is a political prosecution at its finest or something like that. But they didn't. The Wall Street Journal didn't appear to have that same narrative when they went after a former president using a law from the 1800s that was never used and combing through all of his finances to try to find one thing. That's a political prosecution. What's happening to Eric Adams is he's being guilty of corruption, a corruption probe. He's being found guilty. And by the way, this is just his first indictment. I believe there will be more. Eric, do you believe that there's going to be more scandals around Eric Adams' administration? There's going to be more indictments and possibly even further indictments against Eric Adams?
Yes. If you remember, I said earlier in the episode, 100%, I said that I was shocked that this was the particular indictment. I figured that there would be something about Consafritos. I figured there would be something maybe related to Diddy when it comes to these freak-out parties. So I said earlier, and I do believe that there will be supplemental indictments surrounding his administration, particularly when it comes to Eric Adams. We've seen the appearance of impropriety. We've seen the shrouded clouds of suspicion. And this has been going on for years. And we've really, John, you and I talked about this. And, we're saying, hey, listen, myself and you and Sal Greco and Latina, we're not trying to take credit for exposing Eric Adams being corrupt. Because we're not the ones doing the investigations. Clearly, it's done by Damian Williams. It's done by the feds. But what we have done is we've said, hey, maybe you should look over there, right? Maybe you should look at Banks, an unindicted co-conspirator. Maybe you should look at the fact that Ed Caban, is circled around nepotism. Look at these promotions, that are supported by the Hispanic Society. I do believe that there will be supplemental indictments. I think that this is strategically planned by Damian Williams. I think it's brilliant, just to see what Eric Adams' reaction would be. If that was the case, I think it's a great move by the feds. I do think that it also creates also now an environment to see what he will do and who will speak about it and who will start deleting messages and what other text messages they may get in regards of phones they have not retrieved yet. But what's amazing about Eric Adams is Eric Adams remembers everything. Oh, I remember that. Oh, this person's great. I remember. But he can't remember his password when the feds went to the phone, right? That's what's in. So, John, I would put my last dollar right now. If I'm a betting man, there will be supplemental indictments, Eric Adams in particular.
Tina, what do you think about that?
I don't think it's just going to be him. I don't think it's going to stop with just one indictment. I think that there's going to be many more to follow. And I don't think he's going to be the only politician that's going to be indicted. Because I'm going to tell you something. The Democrat Party, they're all connected. They're part of a circle. Okay? So if one goes down, they're all going to go down. It's going to be like a domino effect. I don't think it's going to be just him. I think it's going to be both former politicians and current. I'm talking about the ones who've been in the game for a long time that's connected. We're looking at, I think this is going to be a big, big scandal. And it's just going to come out in a matter of time. Who knows? It might come out in the month of October. But I did hear allegedly that there's going to be at least 300 people indicted. It's not going to be a pretty thing. And this is why everybody's walking on eggshells at the moment, because everything is going to come to the light. And like you said, Eric, all the phones, they haven't been seized yet. So, the U.S. attorney, what he's doing, he's being very strategic, about it. NYPD is already in hot water. To my understanding, the city agencies, they're in hot water. And now you have the mayor, he's in hot water. And I don't think that he's going to be the only one, because nepotism is at play here. Nepotism is the root of the cause. It is the root of, corruption with the contracts and everything that's coming to light, that's being exposed. You got friends and family that's getting, hookups and getting special positions, high paying positions. They're not even qualified for these positions. I call it, the didn't earn it positions. And, they don't deserve it. Why are they in these positions? Because this circles back to nepotism and their connections, not only just to the mayors, but I think there's only, it's not just to the mayors, but also through the politicians. So I think October, the month of October, you're going to see more. More is going to come to the light. And I think that the U.S. attorney, this is just the tip of the iceberg. He's just getting warmed up.
What do you guys think about Letitia James not saying anything at all? I mean, we had a seated police commissioner resign. We have for the first time in history, we've had a seated mayor indicted, and the number one law enforcement officer in the state, Letitia James, hasn't said a word. Do you think she's just trying to be politically savvy by not taking a position until all the facts come out? Or do you think she's worried about something? Eric, what do you think about that?
Great question, brother. You're firing great questions. I really appreciate it. But before I answer that question, I just want to say to our listeners and friends of the podcast right now, please smash, as Loud Labs would say, I appreciate it, brother. Smash that like button. I appreciate it. There's about 307 people right now on YouTube itself. We would love everyone to smash that like button. John, how many people do we have on here total at this time?
We got about 750 people on here. So if you guys could like, subscribe, check the notifications, and if you're on Twitter or anywhere else, if you could share out this space, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I think that sometimes silence is virtue, right? Sometimes when you're silent, it's a virtuous act. It's virtuous character. But sometimes when you're in certain positions, but sometimes it takes immediate actions, silence is a sign of weakness and a sign of guilt. So I would think, I believe, my perspective when it comes to Letitia James, to me, her silence is a sign of concern and it's a sign of guilt. So I believe that somehow she may be wrapped up into this also. Again, when we speak on Eric Adams, I'm curious what you think about this Latina also. I think, John, it's the same thing. I think he enjoys this. As crazy as it sounds, I think he enjoys this because negative attention is attention, and he sees it as attracting more people, even if he has to be politically in like political purgatory at this point. He's getting a lot of traction and a lot of eyes on it, and I think he enjoys it. I think he just enjoys being at the center of attention. I mean, for him to say, I'm not going to resign, I'm going to reign, he's very savvy when it comes to his words, and they're calculated before he speaks. To reign is to be a king, and I really think that he enjoys this. I think that he doesn't even care. I think if he was to do a year or two in jail, I don't think he would care. He'd be like, you know what? I was the king. That's all he cares. And I think that I really do. I mean, look at him. I just think he enjoys this.
He cares more about power. And you have to understand, you're dealing with someone who's been in the game. He knows exactly what he's doing. And, he's smiling and acting like, everything is fine. A typical narcissistic behavior. And while he's smiling and enjoying the perks of our tax-paying money, your city is crumbling beneath you, and many are suffering and paying the price for the chaos that's been created under this current leadership. And you have illegal migrants being put in front of the people. You have veterans, for Christ's sake, sleeping on the streets. Veterans who cannot even afford to put a meal on the table because they're not getting access to resources. Because guess what? You drained the resources. We are now in debt. We are bankrupt. The city is in a crisis at the moment. And we have failed leaders in office who are not taking care of the people. I know so many families who are working 3 to 4 jobs, barely making ends meet just to pay their rent and mortgage. Some of them having to go without meals in their stomachs because they cannot get help, or the inflation is just too high, or they're just not getting paid a decent salary so they can live with pride, live to take care of their families. It's really disheartening to see what these politicians are doing to us. It's really disheartening to see that we're still being governed under a one-party rule.
What do you think about Letitia James?
Letitia James, I think that she's worried. I think she's worried. She hasn't commented. She's been silent. She is in the highest position in New York State of law enforcement. Why didn't she take action before everything hit the fan? Why didn't she take action? What role does she play in all of this? And I think that people need to start looking at that. They need to start looking at her patterns. They need to start looking at the people that she's been associated with, the people that she's been tied to. Start doing your homework. Why is it that our attorney general, she's absent? She's not here. Who do we have here to govern the New York City taxpayers? Who do we have?
Yeah, we don't have anybody. And honestly, this is all of New York City voters' fault. Eric Adams being the mayor is New York City voters' fault. He is Adams after the indictment, and I think this is what people don't understand about Adams, how he could just blatantly lie. I mean, because I think most of us are good people. And if we were under an investigation, even for something we didn't do, we'd be mortified, we'd be horrified, we'd be shaking in our boots. We would almost appear guilty just from being afraid, right? But Eric Adams is a street guy, and he's showing you exactly who he is. He's not afraid of the adversity. I've pointed out since the moment I left the police department, I've pointed out lie after lie after lie, every day lies to New Yorkers, because this is what he's been doing ever since he's a young boy. He's a self-admitted street hustler. He was running numbers. He was dealing drugs. He was doing all of these things. And New York hasn't seen people like this in a long time. He's an old school street guy. And that's why I continuously compare him to John Gotti, not because they're the same person or because they committed the same crimes, but they have the same character. They have the same flair, the same way to garner attention, the same way to paint themselves as victims while they're doing dirt. And they'll continuously lie to your face. Here he is after the indictment, dancing. He's happy. He's smiling. He don't got a care in the world. I didn't do anything wrong. He's getting everyone behind him. He's getting all the conservatives behind him. No one's going on the fact that there's not one positive thing that this man, and for all you new haters that have joined today to bash Latina, just name one thing. Name one positive thing he's done for New York City. I don't want to hear about he gave you guys a contract, because I don't want to hear about that. You funded it through your own health care. He took care. I don't care. You funded your own. He took away your health care. He tried to take away your health care. Shout out to Marian Pizzatola for fighting back on that, and New York City retirees. He hasn't done one positive thing. He hasn't stopped one thing. But we have a seated mayor who now comes out that he doesn't know. He's claiming to not know the password to his own phone. Does that sound like fully cooperating in an investigation to you? Or does that sound like an obstruction? Does that sound like obstruction governmental administration? And if we have a mayor that can't remember his phone password, is that really a competent person that should be in the office of the mayor? What do you think about him telling the feds that he doesn't remember the password to his phone?
That's what I'm saying. The fact that he told the feds he can't remember to the password to his phone. Cold. Right? I mean, listen, that's cold. Latina, that's cold. Right now, we talk about lifelines. You're a cop out in the street. Your radio is your lifeline. You're the mayor. Your phone is your lifeline. Your phone is your communication to the entire world. For you to forget your password is the biggest outright lie. We've been saying it. This administration lies about everything. They lie right to their teeth. They tell you this glass. Look at this glass right here. You see it's clear. No. This is black. You don't understand that. And they lie, and they tell you perception versus reality. And for him to actually have the goals to lie about his password, and actually people are still supporting him, that should have been a defining moment. Like, wait a minute, buddy. You don't remember the password to your phone? I can tell you right now, my son, my daughter, their little kids, they know the password to my phone. They know how to get to my phone because they watch Coco Melon and they're on YouTube. They know the password to my phone. And so for Eric Adams to not know the password to his phone and people to still stand behind him, I mean, man, those people are bamboozled. I feel sorry for those people that you're actually listening to this man. And again, John, I agree with you. Latina, I think you would agree also that,
Of course.
if you're accused of something, you would be like, oh my God, first of all, I can't believe that people would actually accuse me of this. They would actually think that I'm capable to do this. And he's standing there smiling. He's enjoying it. You're enjoying being accused of having illustrious accommodations. Forget about all the other appearances of impropriety, all the other clouds of suspicion, potentially be involved with Diddy parties and freak out parties and potentially having ties to a racketeering scheme and having ties to banks. Forget about all that. Just this alone. You're not embarrassed that, hey, people think that I actually, scam my way to get into a better accommodations. They think I'm that kind of person, but he doesn't care. I think he enjoys it. I don't know what kind of street hustler he was, but he sure as hell is a hustler. He's a magician.
He's interfering with the federal investigation, which might not end well for him. That's exactly what he's doing. You want to be a wise guy and act like you don't remember the code to your phone, you're interfering. And that may not go well for him.
So so I think we're all under the same thing because, everyone's like, oh, yeah, cops should be held to a higher standard. I agree. Cops should be held to a higher standard.
Of course.
So why aren't we holding our mayor to a higher standard? I mean, should elected officials not be held to that same exact standard? Shouldn't cops and elected officials, they're public servants, but I think those are the people that have the ability to damage our lives the most is the police officers and elected officials. Should they be held to the same standard? Eric, what do you think? Should cops and elected officials be held to the same standards?
So, there's no secret about it, how I feel about leadership. I think that leadership is the most important tool and most important resource to an organization. And I think that when you're in a position of being a public servant, you should be held to a higher standard. And the standard and threshold should be even higher when you're in a leadership position. And when you're the mayor, you are leading the city, or at least you're supposed to. You're leading the police department, leading the fire department. So absolutely, the standard should be even higher. I mean, look, isn't that why they created the disciplinary matrix? If you're a lieutenant and you get a civilian complaint review board as the most complained cop, it's more heavily weighed than a police officer because you're in a leadership position, and the standard should be higher. So the standard should clearly be higher for Mayor Eric Adams. Absolutely. Latina, what are your thoughts?
I think that elected officials on all levels should be held to a higher standard. They should be held accountable for their actions. If anything, they have immunity more than our law enforcement because they're the ones who put policies and laws in place, right? Why can't we hold our elected officials accountable? I think that people mistaken, and this goes back, and I'm speaking about, the Black community, the Hispanic community. Stop viewing these people like they're gods or celebrities, okay? They need to be held accountable. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing as leaders, there is a process. You can file ethics complaints against them. You can file a complaint with the Office of General Counsel. Let's not treat these people like they're celebrities. They are paid through our tax dollars to represent us, and if they fail to represent us, or if they disrespect or put their constituents in harm's way, yes, they need to be held accountable. And we need to get our heads out of this whole, they're celebrities. These are not celebrities. These are public servants who are receiving public money to represent us. They have to represent the people. That's the bottom line.
So, a lot of people were calling out who Eric Adams was prior to his election. I certainly was. While I was still on the job, I vocalized it loud and clear. I vocalized it to his supporters as well on the job, and that I was not in favor of him at all. I was a big supporter of Bill Pepitone. Not going to lie, and nobody seemed to care because medical freedom was not on everyone's mind, as well as sanctuary city status wasn't on everyone's mind. because again, cops are don't pay attention to politics, and it's a huge fail. And the other huge fail of that is that they don't live in the city. And you could say what you want to about it, but that directly affects the politics in New York City, is that a lot of city workers don't live in the city. And that's why I always say that they should live in the city. And people, then they should be given an affordable wage. And yeah, I get it. But I lived on that affordable wage in New York City. So, I lived on that wage. I never left New York City until I was forced to. So the whole time I was on the job, I lived here, and I understand that people, I'm not saying that you can't, but understand that you're being governed, you working for a city, and you're being governed by their rules because you don't have the right to vote in that. And that's part of the problem. So during the debate that I'm sure none of the cops watched, except for the ones who knew that if Eric Adams got into office, they would move up in the rankings. They would get deputy commissioner spots. Andrew Yang says this, and now Andrew Yang, another one I'm not a fan of at all. I mean, he has some policies that I'm like, oh wow, that makes sense. And then he has other policies that I'm like, what planet did this guy fly? What UFO did this guy land on Earth from? Because they're just completely off the wall. But I think Andrew Yang definitely has a moment of clarity, but he's not someone that I would have ever supported for the mayor, especially on his last mayoral run. But this is what he says. Take note to what he says about Eric Adams.
Eric, we all know that you've been investigated for corruption everywhere you've gone. City, state, even Barack Obama's Department of Justice investigated you. You've achieved the rare trifecta of corruption investigations. Is that really what we want in the next mayor? You think you're going to enter City Hall and it's going to be different? We all know it's going to be exactly the same. That's why so many people on the stage don't want you to be mayor. Like everywhere you've gone, Eric, people look and see that you don't pay attention to the rules of the road. You're unprincipled. Like you actually advised New Yorkers last summer to go confront their neighbors over illicit fireworks, and a woman followed your advice, Shatavia Walls, and she lost her life. Eric,
I mean, what do you think about that?
You hear from the horse's mouth.
You're not kidding.
The man said Barack Obama investigated him. So I just want the listeners to pay attention to that. If they're not listening to this debate clip, I don't know what else to say. Andrew Yang called it a couple of years ago. So it's obvious this is not politically motivated. This investigation began, I think it said 2014. 2014, right?
2014.
So this is over 10 years worth of investigation. This is not something that just appeared out of nowhere. And they're going to ignore this clip that you just played, John, and still run with the whole political persecution narrative, identity politics. It doesn't matter what you put out there. They're still going to run with that line.
Hey, Latina, first of all, there's a couple of haters, a couple of trolls on this podcast right now, but they're still fans. But you also have some people here that support you. We got friends and listeners to the podcast, great friend to the podcast, amazing aunt. She gave $9.99 to the podcast. Thank you so much. She's a great friend. But she said a nice comment to you, if I can find it. These are rolling in. Great to see Latina on the show. She is 100 on point as always. So that's nice to hear. Listen,
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great friend to the podcast. Listen, I remember this debate. I remember it specifically. I remember watching this. And you know what's interesting is Mayor Eric Adams has the same smile then that he has right now. He enjoys it. And listen, John and I both, we compare Eric Adams to John Gotti, but who do I also compare him to? I compare him to Michael Dowd. So most of our friends and listeners of the podcast know, if anyone here from out of state, maybe not familiar, Michael Dowd was a corrupt police officer in 1992. He testified during the Marlin Commission, one of the most prolific and corrupt police officers ever to play the NYPD. But what did he say? He said in his Marlin Commission, you know what he said, Latina? John, he said he just kept winning. He didn't care about consequence. He didn't have that mindset of consequence, but he just kept winning. He's like, you know what? At some point, he said, he thought, oh, you know what? he did something. He's like, I thought I would get caught, and then I didn't. And then I did something else. I thought I would get caught, and I didn't. And I just kept winning. And he said eventually he just thought, I'll always win. And I think that's what it is when it comes to Eric Adams. He's always winning. Thomas Joyce, $10 to the podcast. Thank you so much. But even the appearance of impropriety is reason to step down. Absolutely. We have drilled that constantly, right? And been so expressive on this podcast. Enough appearance of impropriety should be enough to step down, because you should have shame in yourself, shame in your name, and try to vindicate your name. And also, if you're a public servant, you're putting others before you put yourself. You'll be putting the city, the police department, the city workers, you put them before you put yourself. But no, he didn't say I'm a public servant. He said, I'm not resigning, I'm reigning. If anybody would like to look up the definition of reign, it's to be king. He wants to reign supreme. He claims to be a member of Supreme, so he wants to reign supreme in New York City. Nothing changes with Eric Adams. He's the same man right there. He's the same man he is now. He's the same man when he was a captain and he was a rebel rouser and he never wanted to be a cop. That's who he is.
Well, I do have one question for the listeners and for John and Eric. How do you guys feel about current elected officials running for the mayoral seat? Do you feel like things will change under their leadership if they were to take over as mayor? Do you think anything will be different, or do you think that these are just, politicians that's basically seat hopping? And I think that that's a question that I'm posing to the New York people, New Yorkers who are here in New York City, and to John and Eric.
So I met with a bunch of elected officials and people who are running for office, and the conversation was less than promising, right? It was less than promising. So one, I disagree with both of you. I think we're in the last days of a dying regime, and I think Eric Adams will resign. He will ultimately resign. He put the nail in his coffin, in my opinion, when he spoke out and saying that he was targeted. He is hurting the Democratic Party, and they're not going to want him to continue this charade. They're not going to want this charade that the Biden and Obama administration targeted him so close to the election. He's going to pull votes away from Kamala Harris. So I don't think they're going to allow him to. I think, you're seeing Al Sharpton and everyone coming to bat for him. And I think it's all just like he went to bat for Ed Caban right before he stepped down. I think you're going to see some resignations this week coming, some high-level resignations around Eric Adams. And it's just a precursor to him ultimately resigning. I get what you're saying. He's the guy is he seems unwavering in his pursuit of dishonesty. But so anyway, in those conversations, the talk was two things. One, the resignation, who's going to come into place, Jumaane Williams or Brad Lander, for the 90-day period or whatever it is, 60 to 90-day period. And everyone's like, oh, things are going to be much worse, but they're going to be a placeholder. Everyone's like, to me, I can't even have the conversation with people when people want to talk to me about it. And even now I'm just frustrated, even with the thoughts in my head about having this conversation again. It's because we're worried about people that potentially could be the mayor, but more than likely will not be the mayor. We're not having the conversation around past those 90 days. Past those 90 days, could things get worse under Brad Lander, Jumaane Williams? I would say, yeah, absolutely they could. But would I rather a criminal enterprise, what appears to be a criminal enterprise running New York City? And again, like I said, everyone that's in support of Eric Adams, you will be erasing your tweets. You will be. You will be erasing your social media. You will be. I guarantee in the coming months, in the coming weeks, you will rescind that support, and you will be embarrassed you did it. It's going to be reminiscent of the people who supported the defund the police movement and the people who went all in on COVID. You will remove your support of that, and you will not be proud of your stance at that time when the things come out. But who is the next mayor? Who's in the dugout? Who's on the bench? Nobody. Who's going to run for mayor? Listen, I'm not a fan of Cuomo. Sharks in the water. He drops his name in the hat. I personally think he would unseat Eric Adams. He's that popular amongst Republicans and Democrats. Why? I don't know. If Cuomo comes in, I think New York City will be much better run under an Andrew Cuomo than an Eric Adams. If it's Brad Lander, who I don't think it would be. If it's Jessica Ramos, who I don't think it would be. if it's Jumaane Williams, who I don't even think is going to run. I think, yeah, you could potentially see the leadership. I can't even say lead. Eric Adams has not done anything in the city. It could get worse, but this criminal enterprise needs to be removed. We need strong players on the bench. I'm sorry, Curtis Sliwa. I support you. I respect you. You're not it, my friend.
Eric?
Latina, I love the question. But before I address, I just want to thank some of the listeners, friends. We got some great friends here, and they really help. They weigh in. There's a lot of great comments here. If you have an opportunity, just check it out. Linda AC, $20. She put excellent show. Linda, thank you so much. She's always with us here. I really appreciate it. And Ulrich, $20. The job is on the level. Yeah.
Eric, is that you? Is that Eric Ulrich or is that Ulrich? Who is that?
I have no idea. But thanks for the $20.
Eric Ulrich, hi.
Is that the indicted Eric Ulrich? Or?
Hey, if it is, listen, thanks for the $20. Well, we can always give it back as commissary. So, you know what? Latina, I think it's a great question. So I'm a firm believer. I say this all the time. I compare life to the movie Shawshank Redemption. And I think sometimes you have to crawl through shit to get to the other side, which means things have to get worse. So does it mean it could be worse than Eric Adams? I guess you could say yes. But how much worse could it really be? You know, and I agree with John. We'll get a placeholder. I believe we're in a transition period. If we do have Brandlander, who's I don't trust him with $1, not because I don't think he's a man who lacks integrity, but I think he's just a complete moron, and I wouldn't trust him with $20 to the bank, or Jumaane Williams. But at the same token, sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. When it comes to New York City suffering from voter apathy, Mayor Eric Adams got the primary with 400,000 votes. That's not even 10% of the entire city. That's a small amount. So maybe if things get so bad, so difficult to the point that people actually start to get out there and say, you know what, I actually have to vote, then you know what? Then we're headed for a step in the right direction. So I do believe things have to get worse before they get better. But at the same token, even if we get someone in there that is not as savvy as the swagger of Eric Adams, but if they're not corrupt, at least we could get the police department, and that's really important when it comes to public safety, and that's a correlation to prosperity, just as Mayor Eric Adams would say with New York City. At least we could get the police department, the fire department, and we can start to get the proper appointments there that are not there because of nepotism, but they're there because of their experience. We may be headed in a better direction. So I don't think, and what's so important, when someone's in a leadership position, they do not have to be the smartest person in the room. We could even get someone who's a complete idiot. But if they know who are the smartest people, and they're willing to put the smartest and the best people in the right positions in the police department, the fire department, we could get back to a better city. That's my perspective.
So how do you feel about current leaders running for the mayoral seat? Do you think that they're going to be effective as mayor versus then their current role as maybe Senate? I see that there's a couple senators running. I think you have Jessica Ramos, you have Zellner. You know, how do you think what would be different if they were mayor versus their current role as senators? Because we know that both are progressives.
I agree.
Do you think it's going to be any different? Do you think that they're just seat hopping? Because I know about the pensions. I don't know if the viewers know about the pensions. Well, you can have a state pension and a city pension. So I already know. Like, I know they're not doing this for the greater good of the people. This is about money and pension, because we know their policies are just absolutely terrible. So it would be good to hear from the listeners. How do you feel about these current senators running for a mayoral position where they're not even effective in their current roles?
I agree. Well, we always have to look at leadership as a small unit breakdown. So if they're not effective in their position now, clearly they're not going to be effective in their position in mayor, right? Because they have the small unit leadership breakdown. So they're leading at their level. And if they were appointed as mayor, they would be leading that position. They would be leading the police department, the fire department, right? The commissioners. So no, absolutely not. But again, it goes back to what I'm saying. I think it needs to get worse before it gets better. I have no problem. Let's put someone in there that's far worse than Eric Adams, because they are there as a placeholder, as John said. I agree. It's a transition period, because when we have the special election, maybe we can actually have people say, you know what? I'm tired of seeing who's in charge of this city. I mean, for the last 11 years, we've suffered under Mayor Eric Adams and former Mayor Bill de Blasio. We actually have to get out there and vote. And that has to be the message. How can we allow Eric Adams in a city of 8.5 million people to get a primary on 400,000 people? You know, in New York City housing alone, just in New York City, there's about 500 to 600,000 residents. So we have less people voting that actually live in housing. Just to show the correlation, we have a city of 8.5 million people, but yet not even 10% actually vote. That's the biggest problem. So maybe if it gets so bad that people get so pissed off that they'll actually leave their homes and vote. That's what we need. Vote.
Well, yeah, but who? Like that's what we're saying here. Like, it's not just vote; it's bigger than that. Like we need to identify candidates. And unfortunately, like, I'm not a fan of Vicky Palladino, but if I'm not a fan of Joe Borelli, I'm not a really big fan of Ina Vernikoff either. I think my top two would be like a Bob Holden or a Joanne Ariola.
I like Bob Holden. I think he would be good too.
I agree. We were talking about that the other day, John. And I'm not a Democrat, but I don't find myself to be either extremely Republican either. I find myself somewhere in the middle. But I do like Bob Holden. He has made sense. We heard him testify with the Civilian Complaint Review Board. He talks about how the Civilian Complaint Review Board doesn't look at the totality of the circumstances, which to me means maybe he'll look at body camera in its entirety. I think he's been a pretty reasonable person. I know you like Joanne Ariola. She said some great stuff, stands behind medical freedom. You know what? I would vote John. I would vote you, and I would vote Latina. That's who I would vote. Honestly, I would vote you, John, or I'd vote Latina. Someone that actually cares about the city, real people. That's who I would vote. Real people. People like you.
Yeah, but listen, I'm going to sit here and say right now, I do not think I am qualified to be the mayor in New York City. But I also think I'm much more qualified than Eric Adams is, right? And I hold that true of a lot of people. So, Latina, you're asking the question, like, do I think it's going to get worse? So I think right now, New York City is currently under socialist control. The New York City Council has passed anything they wanted, right? They just haven't had the cheering section of the mayor. That's all they're missing. Like, Eric Adams really hasn't stopped them in doing anything. I mean, everyone was saying, oh, well, he pushed back on the Rikers bill and he pushed back on the right to know. What was that? The stupid reporting thing. He pushed back, but he really wasn't against it. He said, oh, I support it. I just don't like this one section. And he wasn't successful. He didn't garner any support. He didn't even reach out to any city council members. So right now, there is no leadership in New York City. So although could it get worse? Yes. Do I think it's going to get much worse? No, I don't. Because I think Eric Adams has been completely ineffective for 3 years while we've been under this progressive socialist. And by the way, Eric Adams considers himself a progressive. So we're under socialist control right now. The only difference is now we're under socialist control in what appears to be a criminal enterprise running our city. So these campaign donations are just the tip of the iceberg, people. I mean, we have a police department doing shakedowns of businesses. We have people getting paid off in the Department of Buildings, Department of Health, Fire Department, when it relates to inspections, when it relates to enforcement around these businesses. This whole marijuana program has been a scandal. We're glossing over the fact that New York City Sheriff's Office, before I play this video of Eric Adams starring in a Turkish movie about a Brooklyn politician being bribed by the Turkish government. I guess this didn't play out too well. Before I play this video of this, let's just talk about Sheriff Miranda for a second. So we pointed out the city council hearing, right? I watched the city council meeting. I was like, I couldn't believe what I was watching.
I was baffled.
I couldn't believe what I was watching. So I felt compelled to post about it, and I felt compelled for us to talk about it, and we did. And I think we all said is this guy should not be running the sheriff's office. He shouldn't even be in a patrol car because he doesn't know how many arrests they've taken out of raids that they had. He's testified that he doesn't believe they've taken any money, even though as he's testifying, I'm looking at newspaper things in my head are popping up of the times the sheriff's office has confiscated money. He doesn't know how many NYPD officers are assigned to him. And we had already labeled out on this podcast that these raids that Viral News was a part of, one in particular, the amount of evidence that was being seized, it wasn't properly being cataloged like it should be during a search warrant. And now Sheriff Miranda has just called up DOI miraculously after this starts making news and it hits the papers and all that. And by the way, you guys are all welcome for following this podcast and eating off this podcast. I guess it's an easy way to write a story. But it's not that we need credit for it. We don't really
at least give us the courtesy and
it should be a little courtesy about where it was first reported. I agree there should be a little courtesy, but I don't care. Ultimately, I don't really care because everybody knows where it came from. But now he calls up DOI and says I found $100,000 or $150,000 in cash in my office, and I don't know where it came from. I mean, and we think that this doesn't have anything to do with this mayoral administration. We think that this has nothing to do with the Office of the Nightlife, this office that oversees marijuana. We don't find anything weird about any of this. Eric, what do you think about that? He just finds $100,000 or $150,000 in cash, calls DOI on himself.
First of all, what did we say during that testimony? We had done a podcast. We said either he's a complete moron or he's a moron that's actually hiding money, or he's both. So, I mean, complete scale. I mean, the fact that after that testimony that he had to go back and miraculously some money was found, which me is an indication of how much money is there really behind closed doors. Because if this is the money that you turned in, there must be millions behind closed doors that we don't know. Because if they are dirty and they're turning in money, they're not turning in every cent. Yvette, I want to give you a shout out, even though she put, I don't want to shout out, just proving a point. Love you. Listen, I really appreciate $99.99 to the podcast. Thank you so much for that donation. Jill Morrison, $4.99 to the podcast. $4.99 to the podcast. She puts Macari for mayor. Love you, brother. Keep exposing them all. Absolutely. I just want to say this. Look, this is what I say. I think John could be the mayor. I think Latina could be the mayor. I think I could be the mayor with zero political experience. And honestly, I it's not something I dreamed of being in. I don't want to be in the political realm. I know, Latina, it's something you want to do. Gigi Jupiter, by the way, $19.99 to the podcast. Latina, will you run for office again? We're going to get to that. Thank you so much for that question. But I think we could be candidates for mayor. Why? Because we're humble. And I think it's what it takes to be in a position like that is humility. And I can tell you this, and it also takes an extreme amount of leadership. And I compare it to, when I was a special operations lieutenant or an anti-crime sergeant, my teams were so effective because they were handpicked. And I would actually interview every person. And sometimes, people always thought there's this perception that we already know who's coming to these teams, right? Just as with Eric Adams, we know who's going to be appointed. And that wasn't the case. When I was in a leadership position, I would handpick them and I would interview. And there were some cops where people like, you picked that guy? Or he wasn't, in the cool crowd or someone they didn't think of. And I'm like, no, that guy is intelligent. This guy, I would always find people that, listen, I'm not computer savvy. I would always find these young kids, they're great with social media. I need that guy. That guy's good with social media. He can teach me. This guy is a great leader. This guy I need on board. This guy is a great communicator. And I would find people that were even better, that had better skills than myself, and I could learn from them. And that's what leaders have to do, is you have to know how to put people in the right place. That's what good leaders do. And I think that's why we could be mayors, is because we would put the right people in place. We wouldn't put people because they're our friends, because we grew up with them. We wouldn't put people that are corrupt because we have integrity. We wouldn't put people like Sheriff Miranda in position. Clearly, I don't believe a word he says about this self-notification. if there's 150,000, how much money is there really? And again, I would handpick my people because you get to pick people that are more intelligent than you. It's not about what you know, it's about your resources in around you. And that's what makes good leaders. What are your thoughts, Tina?
No, I agree with you 100%. It's not about it shouldn't be just about experience. It's about, integrity and how in your and what your platform is about. I think people pay more attention to, they care too much about, like I said before, the identity politics and not think about the solutions and what's best for their respective districts. So I agree with you 100%. And to answer Gigi's question, do I plan on running for office again? Maybe down the line, I might run again. But right for now, my focus is to, help flip some of these districts so that we can get more people to support Trump for his presidential election, because that's the only thing that we should be focusing at the moment. And hopefully when he gets in, he will get elected by the grace of God. Then we can focus on maybe changing some of these seats and flipping it to more of a moderate to maybe Republican. A moderate Republican can take over the seat. But I hope and pray that this is a wake-up call for many New Yorkers to pull away from the Democrat Party and start shifting more towards, either Republican or independent, because, one party rule is not effective. It's not doing us any justice. And plus, the Democrat Party has been hijacked by the socialists. It's no longer the same. It's no longer Kennedy Democrats. I don't know if you guys were Kennedy Democrats. I once identified as a Kennedy Democrat. So it's just really different. Things are different now. So it's running for office should be more about your solutions, your platform, your integrity, and what your hopes are for the people in the community. It shouldn't be about who's popular and what my race is or what my gender is. It's about what I can produce for the community to help move the city forward. But as far as a mayoral candidate, once Cuomo announces, if and when he does announces, you could just forget about all the other candidates running, because he's going to win. It's just the fix is in. He's going to win that seat. They're gearing up. A lot of people are supporting him behind the scenes. Zellner and Jessica Ramos and whoever, you might want to sit this out because you're not going to beat Cuomo. I hate to say it. If you get a Republican to run, it has to be a strong Republican, a Republican that's moderate, a Republican that can actually develop a platform that can help move the city forward. That's the only thing that I believe that New Yorkers are more concerned about. Having the same faces run for office does not benefit us. The only one who stands out is Cuomo. He's like one of the strongest leader in this potential mayoral campaign. So we'll see what happens. It's all about playing it by ears.
Well, listen, I'm a 80s baby. I'm a product of Reaganomics. So although I was a registered Democrat originally before I knew anything, I was just a Democrat because my parents were Democrats. And I think at the time I registered, 86% of New York City were Democrat. So it was just, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just did. Bill Clinton was kind of cool. He was a Democrat. I always looked at him like that. He was the president when I was a kid, when I was eligible to vote. So I didn't really know nothing about politics. And as soon as God woke my eyes and my ears and I understood what was going on, I immediately switched my stance, became a Republican. Republican Party turned their back on me in New York, and then I switched to an independent. I am a registered Republican now in the state of Florida. But listen, shout out to all the donations. Shout out to Jill Morrison. She was actually not my squad sergeant, but she was a sergeant when I was a young cop. I wasn't even in her squad, and she vied for me. She was always a cheerleader for me to move up, to be an anti-crime, to be, she pushed me to be a sergeant. And there was a lot of collars that I made that her senior officers tried to steal when I was a rookie. And she actually when I would fight with them, and she's like, "Oh, no, you take the collar." So she was always a great sergeant and a great example for me when I became a sergeant. So shout out, Jill. I appreciate everything.
Hi, Jill.
But again, more importantly than the donations, I just
Thank you,
appreciate
Joe.
I appreciate the people that are here. We appreciate the comments. I just want to play this little clip. So this is a clip of Eric Adams when he's the Brooklyn Borough president. Here they are walking out of Brooklyn Borough Hall with two Turkish businessmen bribing this politician in this movie. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts about what you think about this. This is this to me, when I seen this last year, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, I can't believe what I'm watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Why?
You gotta love Eric Adams. He is the main character in his own movie. His life as a mayor has been a complete movie. You know what? I have
They
put a
might
post
make a
about
movie
this.
about him. Who knows?
You're not kidding. Latina, I put a post about this the other day. I said sometimes acting is lifelike. And it's exactly, he is living his life. This is Eric Adams. That's the real Eric Adams. That's why he did such a good job. Listen, Jesse James, thank you so much. $9.99 to the podcast. It says, Latina, thank you. Fellas, thank you for your work. Now, thank you so much to the friends.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, friends, to the podcast that are here with us. We appreciate it. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. But listen, honestly, like John said before, we really appreciate all these donations. Thank you so much for being so kind. And all the stuff. The chat is so important. The information that our friends and listeners put here, it really helps a lot. Just want to let you know that a lot of stuff that you put, it helps us, refresh our memory and just bring up some ideas. But again, I think this is lifelike. This is the real Mayor Eric Adams. Latina, do you agree on that?
Of course. I saw this video a couple years ago. I
Did you watch the movie?
Oh my God. I think, you know what? I saw that 50 Cent, the rapper, put up a post that he might have to do a documentary about Eric Adams. I was like, oh
50
my
Cent.
God.
Forget
Yeah,
50 Cent's documentary. He
He's
better
trolling them.
50 Cent is awesome, dude. But where I'm in the process of writing the book already. It's called Crumbs. That movie's come out. We're gonna see if Scorsese can direct it. So 50, hit us up. But yeah, 50's killing them. You guys got to follow him. Another guy that you need to follow is Eric Adams' Crime Family on X.
Oh, he's good. He follows
Town
me.
Topics. 24, I believe. What's his handle? Like yeah,
Eric Adams' Crime Family. He's good.
It's at Town Topics 2024. But he titled it Eric Adams' Crime Family. He's been putting out a lot of great information. I think he's actually been beating me, Eric, and Sal to the punch, and you too, Latina. He's been on point about a lot of different things. So I appreciate you if you're listening to this. And but yeah, the Finest Unfiltered, Crumbs. That's gonna be the movie. Well, hit us up, 50.
And I just want to say this to our good police officers out there. I hope and pray that you get recognized for the honest work that you continue to do daily. I hope that whoever becomes the permanent PC acknowledges the good police officers' work, and that they actually promote them for their work and not based off of nepotism. It just hurts me to see so many cops who are not deserving of promotions get promoted for something that they didn't earn. So I just want to say to the hardworking police officers, I pray that you get recognized for your work, because we see what you're doing. The community sees what you're doing. For those of you who are trying to move up the ranks as sergeant, detective, like, people are watching, and just know that, the community, we have your backs.
Well, Tina, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's why I take a tough stance when it comes to these fraternal organizations, especially the Hispanic Society, because we've never seen such an egregious stance where we're supporting the police commissioner. And now it's become a competition when it comes to these fraternal organizations, with them competing with each other. Well, who's going to be at the forefront in honoring Police Commissioner Ed Caban or Mayor Eric Adams, or someone as Man of the Year, someone getting an award? They see it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get them promoted. It's disgusting. Again, Juan Perez should have been Man of the Year. This police officer we just spoke about, Kenny Victoria, why don't they support him, give him Man of the Year? Support the police officers that have their boots on the ground, They need it. But no, because there's no financial, political benefit for these fraternal organizations. It's self-serving. And that's what we see. They're not honoring the police officers that are out there. It's funny how, it was not even 2 weeks ago that Ed Caban was Man of the Year. And you ask me, I don't even hear a word. I don't hear Kaz Daughtry. I don't hear John Shell. I don't hear Juju. I don't hear anybody talk about the illustrious police commissioner, Ed Caban. They buried him already. They don't speak. And you know what? The same man that they kiss his ass, Mayor Eric Adams, if John is right and Mayor Eric Adams steps down, they'll forget about him in 2 seconds. And if Jumaane Williams is the new mayor, I promise you, John Shell, Kaz Daughtry will talk about how great Jumaane Williams is, and his plans are so amazing. You will see that. Mark my words. I'm saying it right here. Juju knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I don't know what Yvette was mad about, but I think she said she wasn't taking any of my crap. Yvette, I wasn't calling you a troll. I don't know what you're talking about. So stick around. Don't get mad if I insulted you. I'm sorry. I have the habit. It wasn't directed towards you. I often do. So I got up on the screen right now. Ingrid Lewis Martin, Deputy Mayor, Chief Advisor to Eric Adams. She steps off a plane. I believe she was coming back from her vacation in Japan, and federal agents get her phone, take her phone. Apparently, there was an interaction that was less than professional at the airport. We're waiting to get the video of that. So until we do, I obviously can't put that out, but apparently something happened at the airport when federal investigators attempted to take her phone. They did actually get her phone. She came right in. And in Eric Adams fashion, and bold in the Adams administration fashion, goes right on the Arthur Idala Power Hour. And she says this. I know we're going on a while. Just 2 more things, and then we'll wrap this up. But just 2 very important things. This and the church thing. So, this, let's do this first. She says this. We're human beings. We are imperfect, but we are not thieves, she said. And I do believe in the end, New York City public will see that we have not done anything illegal to the magnitude or scale that requires federal government and the DA's office to investigate us. So before you go, Eric, I believe that this is an admission of guilt right here. What are your thoughts around this?
There's no doubt in my mind that this admission of guilt. If we just revert back to what she said, I don't believe there's enough guilt to the magnitude that requires a federal investigation. What she should have said is that we are completely innocent of any charges, and we should not be probed by any form of government or any justice system, that we are free from any alleged crimes. That's not what she said. I agree 1,000%. That is an admission of guilt. Just saying, hey, this goes back to what I'm saying, John. Is there a threshold for corruption? Because what she's saying is basically there should be a threshold, and we shouldn't be probed because it's not that magnitude that requires the feds. There shouldn't be any corruption. That's the bottom line. We need people of integrity and moral principle, and this ain't it.
Latina, what do you think about that statement? I just want to read it for you one more time. We're not human beings. We are imperfect, but we are not thieves. And I do believe in the end of city public will see we have not done anything illegal to the magnitude or scale that requires the federal government and the DA's office to investigate us.
In other words, she's guilty. She's admitting her guilt. When you like she said, it came out of her own mouth, and then she went on a podcast to talk about it a little bit. No,
yeah.
If you're innocent, I would keep quiet and let the legal process play out. Right or wrong. Why would you speak about it? If
Latina, you would say, listen, I'm not guilty of any charges. Any court, federal, low-level court, shouldn't be probing us at all. We're not guilty of any charge. We did our job. That's not what she's saying here.
No, she's not. Like I would revert it back to my attorneys. I would say I would let the legal process play out. She is entitled to due process, but to make a statement like that means that you're admitting to something, that there's something there, and you're trying to cover yourself. That's exactly what she's doing.
Yeah, to me, like that statement, she's saying, well, yeah, we're imperfect. We're not thieves. And we haven't done anything illegal to the magnitude or scale that requires the federal government and the DA's office to investigate us. So she's not saying they didn't do anything illegal. She's saying they didn't do anything illegal to the magnitude that requires the federal requires them to be investigated, which is insane to me. And, you know, I keep hearing cops need to be held to a higher standard, and I'm going to keep going back on that. Cops and politicians should be held to that same exact high standard.
Of course.
And a lot of people, I'm going to pull up the next clip, and then we'll start to wrap this up, which is the mayor at church this weekend, testifying at church this weekend, which I honestly think was blasphemous. But before we do, I just think we need to answer one question. A lot of people on here are throwing the name Andrew Giuliani around. I like that idea. He just hasn't expressed interest in it. That is somebody that I could possibly get behind, depending on his stances and his platforms, which he has not given us yet. Eric, what do you think about Andrew Giuliani and then Latina?
Well, if I was living in New York City right now, it would definitely pique my interest. But again, we don't know the complete context. We need to know what he's for, what he's against, and where his stances and policies are. But it does pique my interest, absolutely. Latina, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know that you said you left the Democratic Party, not totally Republican, but as an independent, what is your stance on that?
Be
honest, it's okay.
I like Andrew. I think he's a nice. I've met him twice. Nice guy, nice gentleman. Do I think that this politics is for him? No. I haven't seen his platforms. I don't know his policies. I don't know what his stances are on public safety and among many other issues in the city. I can't speak to it because I haven't seen. He's not active. I don't know much about his background.
That's a great point.
His
not
dad
active.
Is separate. Like his father, we know his father's work. We know his groundwork. We haven't seen Andrew Giuliani, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I can't speak to something that I don't know. Do I think that it would be a good idea for him to run for mayor? I'm a little, I think it's like 50-50 because I haven't seen him. I haven't seen anything from him. I've seen Curtis Lewa is more active. You know, I like Curtis Lewa too. You know, we've seen him in the community. You know, he's been very upfront about the issues. He's standing up for, you know, the taxpayers, the New Yorkers. He's standing up for our law enforcement. He is very active. But I just don't see it for Andrew. Because we don't see him. We don't see him.
I hope we don't base on being active, because Eric Adams is very active, but you know, he's active at the night in nightlife, he's active at the bar, he's active at the club, not necessarily doing police work and being a mayor, but he's active in the wrong places.
No, but Curtis is doing his thing. Curtis Lewa is doing the work. He's been proactive for years now. So I think if the community doesn't know you, they're not going to just go out and support you. I need to, you know what? Let me do my research on Andrew Giuliani, because I've never seen his policies. We'll revisit this later in the next.
Latina, I'm just curious before we go into the next segment here, because that name always comes up, right? Curtis Lewa, we always talk about that.
Of course.
And I like some things about him, but I do have my reservations with Curtis Lewa on certain things. Do you think that he could lead the city? Do you see him as someone that could be in a leadership position?
You know, that's a very good question. I see him more as an activist. I don't see him as mayor. I think that he would be stronger in a activist position. I can see, you know, Curtis Lewa running for public advocate, because he's always advocating for the needs of the people. And I respect that. I respect that about him greatly. I just don't see him as a mayor. Public advocate, yes.
I think that's a great assessment. I have to say, honestly, I never even thought about it in that way. I agree. I didn't see him as being mayoral tenure. I I like some of the things he does. I don't see him being in a leadership position, everybody getting behind him. But I do think that for public advocate, I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
I would support that. I like that. So, Latina, great assessment. That's why we need somebody like you, that you're willing to put people in the right spots. And that's what you have to do. You have to identify people's skills and exploit them skills to make people better and to make the city better. So, John, let's get on with it, brother.
Yeah, so let's start to wrap this up. Last thing, we'll go around one more time, give final thoughts, and we'll go. So this is Eric Adams this weekend giving testimony. Unfortunately, instead of giving praise to God and thanks to God, it always falls back to Eric Adams. And then at the end of this, of course, which isn't in this clip, of course, it's, oh, yeah, make sure you donate to my legal defense fund. But, you know, honestly, blasphemous, slap in the face, but comedy, absolutely. This will fall into my movie crumbs 1000% and into my book. It might even be a digital book that I'm going to write. So 50, you know, I know you're going to get some views, but you're going to have some damn competition. So I think we should join forces here, because I think you're going to need a couple of people that know a little bit about this. So here we go.
Hear the small number of loud people saying, well, he should step down. No, I'm going to step up. I'm going to step up. I'm going to step up. I'm not going to resign. I'm going to reign. I'm going to show those in this city that have hit difficult times in their lives, maybe on the verge of homelessness, may have lost their job, maybe going through a physical ailment or uncertainty. I'm going to show them that during the most darkest moments, that is not a burial, it's a planting. And let God do his work. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to lead this city in a direction that this city is supposed to go into. Just as you have done for 25 years. Congratulations to you. Keep leading our city forward. Lift us up in prayer and lift this great city of New York in a direction that it ought to be. God bless you. God continue to praise you. Thank you so much.
Eric, what do you think about that?
I think we don't need a Saturday Night Live skit. That is a Saturday Night Live skit. It's amazing that people cheer for him when he said, I'm not going to resign, I'm going to reign. And they're like, woo! Are they not hearing what he's saying? He's saying, I'm the king of the city, and I'm going to be the king of the city. I'm going to continue to be the king. You're not a king. You're supposed to be a public servant. Again, we've been saying this for 2 years. Latina, we've been saying for 2 years that he doesn't want to serve the public. He wants the public to serve him. This is the kind of leadership that we need. And again, I'm disappointed. I speak to cops on a daily basis. And I tell you what, I received a lot of opposition, some real polarizing views. And, you know, I've gotten a lot of hate where they're like, you want Mayor Eric Adams out of office? We're going to get your body. We're going to get this one. Well, you know what? That's very self-serving also, because you see Mayor Eric Adams as a benefit for your overtime. You see it as an opportunity. You're not getting overtime because he likes you. You're getting overtime because there's no plan and because it's a diminished police department. So again, stop looking at just yourself. You have to look at the entire city. This is not the man for the job. But I tell you what, John, he is a character, and I'm not kidding. I would love to just sit down with him and just hang out for an hour and have coffee or a couple of drinks. You would probably laugh your ass off. He's hysterical. I mean, honestly, he's a character. There's nobody like him. You know, we always talk about John Gotti. In 20, 30 years, you'll be like, you know what? Eric Adams, he should have done comedy. He should be doing stand-up with Joe Rogan. He's hysterical.
The only thing I'm going to say is this. I don't like when people play with God. You know, just don't do it. Don't play around with God, because it can backfire. Like, don't use him for your own personal gain. And it's a disrespect. So I'm going to just leave it at that. And I agree, you know, with Eric and John. You know, the mayor is his own character, and he's living in his own bubble right now.
Yeah. So yeah, just my final thoughts, and then we'll get you guys' final thoughts, and let's wrap this up. We're going on 2.5 hours. Had over 800 people in here the entire time. It's going to get downloaded thousands of times today, so we appreciate all of our listeners. But yeah, so I think you're going to see some resignations this week, some high-level resignations around the Eric Adams administration. We might even see another possible further indictment laid out later in the week. We'll see how that plays out. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, what we're seeing. So I would refrain. I see a lot of you guys still simping for Eric Adams out there. A lot of people just trying to get in the conversation. I'm not even going to acknowledge it. So tag me all you want. I don't care. I'm not acknowledging it. Eric Adams stuck the nail in his coffin when he spoke out against Joe Biden, saying that now he's being targeted. He's hurting the Democratic Party. I do believe he will be resigning soon. Those are my closing thoughts on this show. Eric, what do you got?
I would say expect more indictments. Absolutely. I expect supplemental indictments when it comes to Eric Adams particularly. And let's expect more indictments coming in and around his circle. Latina, you had alluded to it. You said you heard about 300. Brother AJ, who's our friend and listener, who's here right now, he says 300 also. I've heard that in grumblings also. I definitely think we're headed towards more indictments. So with that being said, I want to thank our friends and listeners to the podcast for being here. Thank you so much for weighing in. It's so important. We will be back 8:05 tomorrow Eastern Time, 5:05 Pacific Time. Latina, it's been a pleasure to have you as always. You know you're a great friend. Let's just have a little fun. I just want to ask you a question with your closing arguments. I'm sorry, not your closing arguments, but your closing statements. But I just want to have a little fun. Tomorrow, we have Mayor Latina Brown of New York City, Bronx resident, right? I love the Bronx. Lived in the Bronx almost a decade. You know, I have a love and hate relationship for the Bronx. So, what's your first order of business? You're the mayor tomorrow, Latina Brown. Congratulations, just won. What's your first order of business?
The first thing I'm going to do is start cleaning up house in these agencies. I will look at all the promotions and do the research to see why this person was promoted and how this person is connected to the mayor. That's the first thing I would do, the former mayor. Clean up. But I just want to say this to the listeners. Please continue to support John Macari and Eric Dim. Give them a follow. Retweet, their lives. Follow the New York Finest podcast. Donate. Let's get this podcast to #1 streaming on all platforms. Show them some love because they're the ones who continue to give you, news about law enforcement, politics, everyday issues in the community. And they're bringing on wonderful people to provide you guys with helpful information about what's going on and what's happening, not just in New York City, but across the country. So please show them some love. Get them #1 on all streaming platforms and give me a follow. Latina Brown right here on X. But yeah, you guys are doing an amazing job. Keep doing the work. And please donate to keep this podcast going. Keep their podcast streaming.
Thank you, Latina. We appreciate it. So, guys, listen, we'll be back 8:05 live tomorrow. We got a lot more. I got a ton of stuff that we didn't even get through that happened over the weekend. So we'll be back tomorrow, 8:05 live. Check us out. Appreciate everybody. Remember, this is all politically created crisis. Check out our friend Tom Sullivan, Assembly District 23 in Queens. Tom Sullivan is the Republican, Conservative, and Common Sense Party candidate for New York State Assembly District 23. Tom is a financial professional who served simultaneously in the United States Army Reserve for 30 years and has now retired. His district covers Ozone Park, Lindenwold, Howard Beach, Broad Channel, and the Rockaway Peninsula.
Come November, I would empower our law enforcement agencies to go out there and do their job and not put them or their families or their pensions at risk for doing their jobs. We need drastic change in Albany so that we have a say in this matter and they realize people of New York State will hold them accountable.
The Sullivan family has a legacy of service. Tom served for 30 years protecting and defending the rights of others. Come this November, he has earned your support. This advertisement's paid for by the Friends of Tom Sullivan.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.